No. You guys! No, no, no! Don't die, Death Battle!
I'm not dying, you idiots!
Welcome back to every episode of Death Battle reviewed in 10 words or less. And no, Smart Alex, I'm not changing the title of this series. It was the only one available in an oversaturated market of ranking videos. Last time was, to put it lightly, without question the worst season of the show so far, with some of the most boring and frustrating episodes I've covered on this series. And yes, that was me being nice. But I was far too dug in at that point to suddenly give up on the crew. Especially with bangers like Balrog vs TJ Combo and Shredder vs Silver Samurai pulling me back in for more. The team was still capable of going above and beyond, and I think they really wanted to prove that with this season in particular by theming it around the most heavily requested matchups in the show's lifetime. For the most part. I say heavily requested by the fans, but some of these episode ideas will likely have you going, fans, what you talking about? Don't get me wrong, there are some awesome matchups we have to look forward to later, and dedicating a season to the folks who've stuck around for so long is commendable, which excited the hell out of me at the time. Then the season premiered.
Sex Panther powers activate!
Black Panther versus Batman. Alright, who asked for this? Raise your hand right now. This is not a rhetorical question. I need to know who to blame for this. I guess if Death Battle had to have some equivalent to Sans on Cartoon Fight Club, it's not that surprising they'd go with Batman. He's crazy iconic, and I guess good fodder for new writers. Though this episode was written by Ben and Sam, so it doesn't even have that excuse going for it. But Black Panther? Really? Nothing against T'Challa, but did we have to bring Bruce back to fight another Marvel character? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good the episode was. That's just shit matchmaking, isn't it? It's not that hard to come up with matchup ideas outside of the comic book rivalry given how long Bruce has been around for. Though, admittedly, Solid Snake would have been just as groan-worthy, cause there's no reality where his hypothetical second episode lives up to the weight and iconic status of his first. Still a better matchup than rich heroes with dark clothes whose parents died that are based on predatory animals. Yep, they really said what if a bat and a panther fought. But bats are scary!
Oh, I didn't realize scariness was the deciding factor in a fight to the fucking death. Genius.
Someone get Tibbz on the horn. They might be able to solve this mystifying puzzle. But it's time to be fair and judge this episode by its own merits, in a vacuum. Which is fitting, cause it sucks. I kinda liked learning about why Wakanda is so powerful and how T'Challa had to actually earn the suit as opposed to just getting it by birthright. But they don't talk about him as a person at all, and it's just an arsenal and feat discussion. He's a nerd that can fight, who also happened to marry Storm.
Lucky.
Bruce's is just as whatever, but that's made doubly, no, triply egregious when we've done this dance already. I know I said vacuum, but they straight up show footage from his Captain America fight. So if even the episode isn't treating itself as standalone, then why should I? This could have been a chance to delve into his character more. Some of his wackier adventures that were hinted at before, or even his importance as one of the first superheroes in our own world. But it's just the same goddamn shit as last time! These are comic book characters! Take us on a journey! Surely there were some cool and crazy anecdotes you found during the research that'd be interesting to show us. Even Lex's segment had that! Tell me more about the alien invasion, not the time T'Challa destroyed a fucking wall! How are there no black boxes? Not a single fucking one for the Marvel vs. DC episode! Why? Is Batman really so boring that you had to use the coffin escape feat again? At least I could say his representation in the fight is different. He finally gets voice clips. Not a voice actor for some reason, but it's Kevin Conroy, rest in peace, so better to have it than not. Let's see, what else is new? He uses a sleep dart gun on a lion. Bruce Wayne is a weeb, apparently. Look, Boomstick doesn't even say it's time for a death battle. I'm trying my best to save the hype here, because this animation is such a nothing burger. As the track name implies, this was in fact a battle at the zoo. Christ, that cover art is dull. Fitting at least. The most interesting thing Bruce uses that hadn't shown up before is the aforementioned sleep dart gun, and I guess the bombs on the sewer bridge? I can't even appreciate the unique environment because of how much it destroys this battle's already abysmally slow pace. Keep your 1 billion lions hypothetical out of my death battle. The animals are basically here for our fighters to flex how big-dicked they are, and I'm not exaggerating. Just listen to the voice clip they chose here.
Witness the power of a king.
Jesus, that's an endangered species, you psycho. If this section had anything to do with them as characters, then it'd be fine. But Bruce and T'Challa aren't even cardboard cutout versions of their comic counterparts here. As far as we know, Bruce summoned T'Challa to a public zoo so they could fight for the throne to Wakanda? Why would Bruce want that? Why would T'Challa accept that? Why aren't they beatboxing? What follows is some painfully slow hand-to-hand, less gadgets being used than the damn season 1 episode. Seriously, how did we not get a smoke bomb sequence where T'Challa could counter with his supervision? And an over-the-top death that still manages to be less funny than the damn season 2 episode. Totally should have used the original plan of Bruce's parents being brought back as zombies to eat him alive. I guess Black Panther vs. Batman gets some brownie points for being the first use of Wiz and Boomstick's official theme by Brandon Yates. A track that goes quite hard and gets you in the mood for some nerdcore carnage. But you want to know this episode's real legacy? The one thing that's kept it out of the bogs of complete obscurity? One damn sentence.
It's certainly believable that Wayne had the ability to develop a gun that could overload the Panther habit. But even if he could, he never would wield it in the first place thanks to his rejection of all firearms.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
Where's the
Firearm.
death battle?
Well,
I had my expectations pretty damn low going into this one, but I couldn't believe how stone-faced I was the entire time. The analysis sections are the epitome of that respect threat complaint I brought up last time. Virtually nothing to latch onto that made me go, wow, I have a greater appreciation for these characters, especially the one that was already here 2 other times. More, please!
What just happened?
At least Batman vs. Captain America had the new writer excuse as well as something new to talk about thanks to Arkham Origins. The most notable new thing Batman got in the interim this time was... Why did you say that name? I get wanting to use Black Panther, what with the new movie that was on the way, but let him fight somebody else for crime's sake. And don't you dare say it's because Batman is popular. He didn't even get top billing this time. And there is frankly no reason to ever revisit this animation other than maybe the track. No offense, Bio, I know this was your first fight on the show. Wait a second. A boring episode themed around animalistic but intelligent fighters with the one memorable part of it being an ending results argument that got memed on by the community? Oh god, we started off our season dedicated to the fans with a Beast vs. Goliath, didn't we?
so, Mordecai, I was thinking about going over some strategy before the tournament. Should I work on my ABAX?
Hey, you guys mind if I put in my mixtape?
Raven versus Twilight Sparkle. Yep, we're really doing this again. Another damn DC episode. Frickin' comic writers over here, am I right? Okay, to their credit, it was at least a unique matchup, even if the reason for it happening in the first place is pretty damn insulting to both characters looking back. Raven isn't strong enough to fight the real opponents, so we figured she'd have an easier time against the baby show. Hey, I've seen every episode of My Little Pony, remember? I'm allowed to make fun of it. You know how Death Battle's always had a reputation of downplaying / outright hating Friendship is Magic, with said reputation only dissipating thanks to the fan-voted episode half a decade later? I never really understood where this reputation came from, all things considered. Sure, Boomstick is constantly groaning throughout Rainbow Dash vs. Starscream, but that was the first time they used Friendship is Magic. And he even had a mini character arc by the end of Dash's segment. And as we established for Deadpool vs. Pinkie Pie, they treated the world of Equestria with complete, unironic respect and only got annoyed at the horseshit ending. When it comes to the pony side at least, these episodes were perfectly fine, especially for the times they were released, meaning they can't be blamed for Death Battle's hate rod for all things hooved. I guess what I'm trying to say is...
This is all your fault!
Ow, my scapula!
Remember that arc Boomstick went through 7 years ago? Down the drain! He's back to hating Pony on principle! Even Chad sounds incredibly dead in his delivery.
Here we go again. I mean, we've seen a pony that breaks the sound barrier and one that breaks physics. Rein it in, Wiz. Your lame puns are musting with my script.
I suppose I can't blame him. Reusing a franchise 3 whole times can be pretty draining. Anyway, Detective Comics Raven has a fine analysis. The only joke that sticks out to me is the Kickstarter bit, and that's just because of hindsight. The Trigon discussion felt a bit clumsy to me. I would have liked a bit more detail about their relationship and how much of a struggle she goes through keeping him at bay. Cause the way they ended off like, she defeated him, and everyone clapped, is pretty anticlimactic. Also, ew, what the heck are you supposed to be? Well, at least you're not my never-ending nightmare! Twilight's is really frustrating. On its own, it's a fine summary of her love for researching magic and even has some fun deep cuts like the quesadillas. I even found the bit of Boomstick hugging Wiz kind of funny with how much it lingers on the awkwardness of the situation. And you just have to sit there and picture Wiz's reaction to this sudden, non-consensual hug meant to garner big-ass lasers. But God, the Boomstick hates emotions and Pony's bit is such a noticeable thorn in this episode's relatively fine script. The hosts coming around on a character is fine when appropriate to the situation, but Boomstick already had this character arc! Why do we have to go through the motions of, hey, this cartoon for little girls about embracing your feelings is actually pretty badass? Yet again! It's so unneeded and almost reaches Ragna levels of writer bias permeating throughout. Nick, you did so well in the last one. Why couldn't Twilight have that same level of respect the whole time? If you still want Boomstick to have a character arc in this episode, why not focus in more on the idea that he prefers to shove his emotions down, and have it be something he learns to accept throughout both analyses, since they're both empaths who literally weaponize their feelings. Something that would appeal to Boomstick's straightforward nature. Not to mention it's kind of the whole reason this matchup exists. There's a lot of options for improving this whole arc narrative, and giving our hosts a little journey like this every now and then is a great way to help analysis sections stand out. Just not like this, preferably. Not to mention Twilight's character arc was severely downplayed. The segment as a whole would have benefited from focusing on the relationships she made in Ponyville and how that shaped her into the ruler we know today. Except not really, because that episode wouldn't be out for another 2 years. But she was still the princess of friendship at the time of this episode. And where would such a princess be without her friends?
Back home, they stuffed in a book as opposed to here, most likely.
Oh boy, here we go again. Princess Twilight.
Hiya. So, you're this Nate guy the girls have been telling me about?
Yeah, yes ma'am. So, should I be like bowing or?
You don't need to do that.
Oh, thanks, Celestia. Or is it thank Twilight now?
Why don't we change the subject? A little pony told me that you were reviewing my episode of Death Battle today, and I assumed having guests come in to talk about their episodes is kinda your thing.
Well, you're not wrong, as much as I fight against the powers that be effing with me.
And I'm here too!
Maybe if I ignore her, she'll go away.
A test of willpower, I see. My friend, you just picked a battle with the wrong Flugelhorn Master.
Alright, I see you. What do you want?
I wanted you to see Twilight. You just missed her during your last visit
Kidnapping.
to Ponyville. Did he just say kidnapping? It was a surprise party, silly. What kid would nap at a time like that?
All of them.
Right. Don't worry, Nate. I promise we won't take up too much of your time. There are just a few things I wanted to get off my chest in regards to my, time on Death Battle.
Well, you're studious enough to not cause a commotion, so as long as you're concise, I don't mind you taking over for a bit. Especially with it being this episode, I could honestly use a quick breather.
Yeah, well, I haven't had the opportunity to read all of my opponents' comics. Why would you ruin a perfectly good story with pictures? My side felt a little underwhelming. Even ignoring Boomstick's comments, none of my friends got mentioned once, and I wouldn't be where I am today without them. Oh, shucks. I didn't even bring up my first time in Ponyville. That day was a really big deal. I met my best friends. Nightmare Moon returned, and we found the elements of harmony to turn her back into Princess Luna.
Oh, I'm sure they'll save some of that fun stuff for when she comes on the show to fight that cool-looking Pokemon guy.
Oh, yeah! I'm actually studying those creatures right now. In fact, I was just about to read this one last-time story about a Typhlosion who...
Focus.
Right, sorry. As if the comprehensive side wasn't bad enough, I'm still unclear whether or not they actually used the comics. On the flip side, the pseudo-math on display here drives me crazy. Like how for some reason they measured one of my biggest feats at the time with newtons, despite having used joules earlier in the rundown. Don't they know newtons need distance?
Thank you!
According to Death Battle, T-Rex was only strong enough to bust through a wall. And that was after he absorbed every pony's magic, including all the princesses and Discord. I can see now why they decided to go with me. They were scared Raven's other opponents were too strong for her.
You better not be dissing on my princess. I will rain chocolate all over your party, Death Battle. Dark chocolate. And also, thank you for having me. I'd love to play again sometime.
You know, that's not a bad point, Pinkie. Friendship is Magic hadn't finished yet, so maybe with your princess powers being permanent and more established, you'd have a better shot at winning next time against someone new. Like Bloom from Winx Club, or even Spyro the Dragon.
Thanks, but no thanks. Don't get me wrong, I know they've improved a lot over the years, especially when it comes to recounting our world's history. But one mediocre animation was already enough as is, and I can only imagine how unsettling a fight involving Discord will be. Ugh. How dare they ruin geometry for me?
You know what? Fair enough. Also, mediocre is being too generous.
What a rarity!
Put me in, coach! I'm just itching to rant!
Please, I could really use some closure here.
But of course, my liege. This fight stinks. Now, I'll give them credit for casting Kira Buckland as both characters, which is a fun nod to Tara Strong. Her Twilight voice is pretty good, and it helps that she's also had experience with the character, much like our previous pony performers.
Aha! Now I've got you right where I want you! Trans-dimensional teleportation? Let's give it a try.
But Raven felt off to me. I get that she needed to have a deeper voice so it didn't sound like they were being played by the same person. Imagine being a voice actor with zero range. Tell me about it. But Raven, to me, works better with a higher, raspier voice, almost monotone, to show how much she's affected by suppressing her feelings all the time, while still sounding like a teenager. Here, she sounds too haughty and overdramatic, ready to kill anything that breathes funny at the drop of a rain boom.
You saw nothing. Darkness take me. Is that all you can do?
This is the hero that constantly tries to hold her emotions back, right? That could be my Teen Titans bias showing, but if I had to choose between giving her a more accurate portrayal or giving the wiki team a fun little Easter egg to write about, I'd go with the former. The setup makes no friggin' sense. Like, yeah, Twilight tries out new spells haphazardly all the time, so sure, may as well have that be the reason they meet. But then we get Raven playing with pony figures as a nod to Teen Titans Go, and Raven is like, no, my secret! Even though Twilight is a pony, one that she clearly owns the marketable merchandise version of, so by that logic, wouldn't this version of Raven be really excited to see her and not immediately attack her and set her home on fire? Pinkie, help!
Oh, that's an easy one, Nate. You see, boss music.
What?
Yep, Raven heard the boss music, so she had no choice but to destroy the one thing that brings her comfort and joy in this agonizing, never-ending battle of life upon this mortal plane.
Twilight.
Better than any motive I can think of.
Okay. Nothing about this battle makes sense. Why are we back in the library after it got destroyed by T-Rex? We even get a
Oh no, not again!
joke from Twilight, but like, they never rebuilt the library in the show! It staying destroyed was a really big deal for the status quo. They even have a whole episode dedicated to her coping over it. So just bringing the treehouse back without explanation defeats the whole purpose of that moment's emotional weight.
How do you think I felt performing on a recreated set of a place I spent some of the happiest years of my life and only to see it get demolished yet again?
Womp womp.
Did you just say womp womp?
Emotional damage isn't the only thing Raven vs. Twilight causes. Unironically, this episode is physically painful to watch.
Ponyville's resident eye for all things colorful. I am ashamed of this display. All of the magic and spell scenes have this annoying strobe effect on them that makes the already erratic animation even more of a mess to try and decipher. Like this moment here. I thought for a second Twilight got absorbed by the soul self or something. But no, she just teleported away with no particle effects to speak of. Not even a smidgen of glitter. How was I not consulted on this?
The conclusion talks about how versatile their magic is with a near equal amount of instant win conditions. But all we get is some flashy light shows, Twilight impersonating her favorite Sonic character, teleporting, and really weak sounding hand to hoof. Finishing off with the portal was neat at least, but still felt unsatisfying with the sound design. I don't think Twilight got any actual hits in to answer for Raven's underwhelming street tier combo. And I highly doubt they were going for a similar thing as Shredder vs. Silver Samurai of trying to make the magic feel more dangerous with how bad the tension is in comparison. Cause whenever their magic spells do hit... Twilight, why are you just floating there?
Good question. I seem to be dramatically pausing for some...
Oh, come on, Pinkie, it's not that scary.
Who said anything about scary? I thought we were having a screaming party.
Well, that sounds more fun than this fight at least. I think it's quite clear that the limited runtime especially hurt this episode. There's so much potential for creative visuals, fun banter that plays off the different vibes of their worlds, moments of Twilight getting to geek out over the spells, more spells in general, getting to actually see Raven Celestia dang final transformation, and ideally less of this Dragon Ball horse crap. It wasn't even the fitting kind of Dragon Ball horse crap. In fact, I'm pretty sure Raven took 0 damage from this fight. Unless one needs therapy for being turned into pot.
Pots of what?
Pot. Is there anything I like about this episode? Well, this moment of Twilight instant transmissioning around all these nature obstacles was alright, but Raven's soul self kinda steals the show. No joke, it's cool as Tartarus. Every single frame of it is a different hand drawing, giving it this otherworldly look that goes a long way in making it stand out from the rest of the cast. Especially with this shot here. Oh, that's sick. And the claustrophobic feeling you get from the darkness slowly taking over the screen as Twilight is left helpless is so cool. No notes from me in regards to the bird. That being said, this death is still really bad. Leading into it, I wholeheartedly disagree that Twilight wouldn't be able to get her magic back on her own, especially considering their weird logic. While Twilight has lost her willpower before, she always required the friendship of others to regain herself. I mean, yeah, when a similar thing happened, simply remembering the deep friendships she made was all it took to get out of her funk. Is thinking about your friends considered outside help now? If this scene was attempted today, I bet you we would have gotten some kind of montage of all the important creatures in her life that would give her the second win needed for one final push. And the soul self sequence would have been the perfect moment for that. But no, instead she's rendered powerless for the rest of the animation, and we get a stupid-ass one-liner that's both cringy and out of character.
Just so we're clear, I never actually said that. In fact, I didn't say anything while filming. We just got dubbed over with a script I was not made aware of.
You're kidding.
Nope. I'm surprised no one noticed sooner. You can clearly see our mouths never move.
How did I miss that? And why?
I think you may know the answer already after season 3, Nate. Hey, Death Battle! Let's watch the lip sync next time! Thank you!
Easily one of the most, well, that just happened, deaths of the show. And Raven even says a variation of that cliche right after.
Well, that was odd.
I get wanting to do something less gory in case little kids stumble upon the video, but it once again feels like further downplaying of Twilight's abilities that she'd be taken out so suddenly with what seems like 0 resistance. I was half expecting her to get up out of the hole all wobbly like a Looney Tune. I guess to be fair, Raven is also really bad about standing there menacingly as way slower projectiles move towards her. Not even a blip on her radar.
At least Dashi got to have a cameo in the end.
7 years since my last episode, and they bring me back for cleanup duty. Whoopee! Also, still best pony episode. Dracone whatever's don't count.
Huh, I was wondering when she was gonna show up.
He really needs to let that go.
As for the ending results, these numbers are so fucking bad, dude! I want to go back in time and strangle this old British guy! What did you ever do that was so fucking cool anyway, Isaac? Notice a stupid fruit fall on your head? Well, I hope those seeds had extra cyanide in them, you windbag! Sorry, you guys weren't here for the last video. I'm still working through some issues. Wait, don't take notes! I'm adjusted, I swear! I can appreciate them adding custom wings to the Twilight sprites they were using. Titans of Magic has a nice contrast in its motifs, and the analyses had tiny glimmers of goodness. But the animation clearly needed a longer runtime, as well as more time in the oven in general, along with the research that gives off alarming Sephiroth versus Virgil flags. And wouldn't you know, being familiar with Twilight's show did not boost my enjoyment of this episode. If anything, it made my time here more miserable. So to summarize the trilogy of Pony, super underrated and a fun time so long as you meet it at its level, an admirable experiment with shoddy, sometimes annoying execution, and finally, a literally painful bore that ruined My Little Pony's reputation in Versus discussion for years. I do not blame folks who never wanted the team to approach Pony again, nor do I blame Luis for calling it his least favorite episode to work on. I'm glad Death Battle got at least one more shot at the franchise later on, so hopefully the aftertaste of this episode can be somewhat washed out now with a sprinkle of chaos and a dash of demonic Doritos. So, how'd I do?
Technically, I'm more of a Blaze girl, but yeah, that just about sums it up. A lot of untapped potential and poor timing when it came to where my journey was at the time. A plus work, Nate!
Why, thank you, Your Majesty. Speaking of journeys, whatever happened to your final alicorn form?
I got better.
Cool. Honestly, without Frankenstein's nuisance looming over my every sentence, you guys aren't half bad to hang out with. My sisters would be so jealous if they knew what I was up to right now.
Aw, thanks, Nate! But don't you worry, I'll do everything in my power as Ponyville's #1 party planner and relationship meddler to make you and Wade the best of friends.
Please don't try too hard.
Oh, and feel free to come over to Ponyville anytime. Just flash this Pinkie signal up into the sky and I'll be there to take you on the fun train. You don't have to worry about us kidnapping you this time. Wink.
Why'd you say that like it was a pun? Did you actually kidnap this guy, or—
Okay, bye now!
But what if you fought Optimus Prime?
Goodbye, Nate.
Oh, come on! It would be so awesome! It would be so cool.
Promise?
Jotaro Kujo versus Kenshiro. Hell yeah, the JoJo episode! Those fights go so hard nowadays, and I remember liking this one fine enough during a time where I hadn't yet gone down the flashy rabbit hole of flamboyant poses and the manliest of ugly cries. One of these days I may give you a try, Fist of the North Star, but for now, hopefully I can have a better appreciation for this episode. It starts off talking about the manliest heroes of fiction by showing characters like Balrog and Bane. What? Jotaro's analysis covers the day he discovered his stand and what it's capable of. That's it. Jeez, no wonder I remembered nothing from this analysis. It's a really bad introduction to the world of JoJo. If you don't already know some of the previously established characters and memes, it'll make the show come across as nonsense. True fans know that it's controlled nonsense. Good job covering the very first part of his journey and nothing else, including the fact that he even went on a journey, accompanied by the most masculine JRPG party of dude bros to save his dying mother from Dio's generational stand curse, since she didn't have the fighting spirit to handle a stand herself like her son and father. But they said Dio! Okay, but who is Dio? And why is he such bad news for this family? Do they have a history or something? I know this is part 3, but the episode is already pretty short, so it's not like they were necessarily strapped for time to briefly break down Jotaro's big bad. But I guess asking for a small summary of part 1 is a bit of a tall order when they can't even mention the journey within his part, nor do they discuss Jotaro's transformation into a mentor role in part 4, as well as his eventual role reversal in part 6, where this time he needed to be saved by a family member. I'm sorry, but this analysis section just isn't it. It felt like I was watching one of the Fairy Tail or One Piece segments, except this time I can confirm it doesn't do the character or his story justice as a man on the inside. No mention of Kakyoin, Avdol, Iggy, fair enough, Josuke, Koichi, Jolene outside of a damn bullet point? The only reason Polnareff got to be brought up at all was for a feat scaling moment. Just kidding, Polnareff wasn't name dropped either, but at least his stand was. Don't you just love characters being treated like functions? Maybe I'll prefer Kenshiro's as an outsider this time. It's just as bad. It tells puns that are lame even by boomstick standards, and once it drops the story coverage for feats, it never looks back. Did he ever save his fiancée? Did he ever get revenge on this guy who clearly wasn't important enough to name drop? Who are these people? Would have been nice to have some kind of build-up about all the pain and loss he'd suffered that led him to unlocking his ultimate technique. It's just one long series of feats gooning over how manly Kenshiro is, and then it just ends. Not even an attempt at a weaknesses section or rounding his story out, just ends. Is the fight good? As if to drive the idea home further that Jotaro's friends don't matter, he's out traveling in Egypt with Joseph. And no one else. Honestly, I'm not even sure why they even bothered including Joseph in the first place when he adds nothing to the fight. Doesn't contribute to the combat, stakes, not even some side commentary, one of the things JoJo fights are most famous for. Too bad we forgot to hire voice actors for an episode that desperately needed voice actors again. Are you really gonna sit there and tell me they just wanted a mouthpiece for more JoJo memes?
Joseph's fucking funny. That's why Joseph's there. The best character ever created.
Is it just because he screams everything?
Yes.
Oh, you did just that. Well then, how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Kenshiro arrives in his sick-ass dune buggy. Wait, what happened to Joseph's car? And commits the heinous JoJo crime of actually just standing there, menacingly. Well, time to fight to the death, random desert hobo. You could have at least said Kenshiro was being hypnotized by Dio to kill them. It'd make this moment fit right at home in Stardust Crusaders. If the rest of the Crusaders weren't off getting their cutie marks or something. You're challenging him in the middle of the desert, dude. Y'all are kinda short on stage options. I would have picked Poke Floats. What follows is far too boring to bother with. Were you looking forward to an exciting contest of their iconic fist flurries that's basically the whole reason this matchup exists? Well, here it is. For 3 seconds, we get some close-up shots. Love it when you do these, Zach. Oh, God! The sprites are all around unpleasant to look at. Not as bad as Cammy vs. Sonya or Metal Sonic vs. Zero, but still dull and blurry enough to make any rewatches a pain. The desert setting certainly doesn't help. Stardust Crusaders was a globe-trotting adventure, and out of all the potential environments to work with, you chose this? Wait, this isn't a Mr. Beast video! They never even went to the pyramids, what the fuck? The dynamic had a decent escalation with Kenshiro figuring out how Star Platinum worked as the fight progressed, with Jotaro needing to get more creative and carefully keeping Kenshiro at bay. Oh, he won. His finger clearly made contact here, you couldn't miss it. I could just end the segment right here. The rest of the fight doesn't matter, it's just fluff. 45 seconds of fluff. The time stop was kinda cool, I guess. Wasn't at all how Jotaro uses it in canon, but kinda cool. Bizarre Stars has some fun callbacks. I think Kenshiro might be bullshit in a normal versus context, guys.
Seriously, this guy is lame as hell.
Good grief.
Yo, I'm gonna let you finish, but
Ding dong.
Crash Bandicoot vs. Spyro the Dragon. I think after all the gritty comics and bulging anime biceps, a little bit of Scrimblow Bimblow action was just what I needed. That and an episode that's actually good, but I'm sure we're getting there eventually. Right off the bat, they do a good job setting up their rivalry by presenting the PlayStation as the surprise third-party challenger, the Abraham Lincoln of the console wars, so to speak, to find out who the ultimate mascot of the company is. Provided you don't look any further than the late 90s. Seriously, this company's rotated through like 50 different mascots by now, and we're still getting new challengers, making this more a battle of who the true OG of Sony is. But also not really, and I think you know why I'm hesitating like that. But before we get to that, Crash's analysis is pretty good. It has an overall cartoony tone that feels natural, but I know what some of you are waiting for. What do I, the guy who openly said he has autism, think about the Crash has autism section? It's alright. Just because I have it doesn't mean I'm an expert, but it's not like they were using it as a means to make fun of him, even if they were sort of calling him dumb earlier. But the point is, I felt no ill will from this comparison. Autistic representation is always appreciated, though let's be real, the best autistic representation tends to be completely unintentional. So even though it's totally a headcanon, if Crash was confirmed to have autism, I'd be all for it. Crash is awesome! And like I said, just because I have it, that by no means makes me some kind of authority on the subject. I just want to be entertained at the end of the day. It takes a lot to offend me, and this episode is no Sia project. I can tell you that much for free. The main thing you need to remember is that if you've met one autistic person, then congratulations! You've met one autistic person. It's called a spectrum for a reason, and I think the episode itself gets this. Notice how they say some people with autism are savants. Doesn't mean we all go through wacky good doctor level adventures. I am Also, notice how I've been solely focusing on this very minute detail since most of the segment gives me so little to talk about. Seriously, why does such a small percentage of the episode affect so many people's perception of it? Crash's segment is at least serviceable. Isn't it crazy how actually talking about a character's personality and fucking mentioning most of their allies and enemies only benefits your analysis? Again, it's not great, but this segment at least made me feel something. Like, what the hell is this ending?
He even finally learned how to speak.
Now let's go home. I need pancakes. Pancakes!
Wait, that's it?
Stop quipping after the end clips, Boomstick. It always sucks. Though not as much as this Titan's design. Get out of my sight, you tribal tattoo, Evan. Moving on to Spyro's, the decision to focus on the Legend timeline as opposed to his original PlayStation games is confusing. Like, wasn't the whole point of this matchup the fact that they were the OG PlayStation mascots? It's quite the tonal clash, and not in a deliberate fun way. Maybe they wanted to focus on the games with more lore so they could go in depth on the characters and story over out-of-context feats. They then proceed to focus on out-of-context feats over characters and story. Like, sure, we get the beginning of Spyro's journey, and nothing else.
He's a character that sort of starts out entering into a world that he's unfamiliar with, and taking aboard something that is kind of quite massive. It's not dissimilar from a journey that I'd taken before.
And they at least mentioned some of Spyro's friends. I assume Cinder is a friend, potentially a love interest. Who knows? Does anyone know? Also, if you're gonna focus on the Legend timeline, why also bring up feats from the OG games and certified trash? Seriously, don't watch the Netflix cartoon. I did not come out of that shit the same, Tizio. I know they tried to pull a Legend of Zelda with the reincarnations, but that'd be like if in Link's analysis they focused solely on the opening to Ocarina of Time and then randomly sprinkled in feats from his other games without warning. I can appreciate the deep cuts in their research, such as using a statement from DeviantArt of all places. And the Thousand Suns parallel was pretty cool, even though I'm not sure if it was worth sacrificing the story coverage. Just look at how long this segment goes without using any Spyro footage. Also, is Wiz claiming that space is a river now? Surprise, surprise, the ending also sucks.
I want a pit dragon more than anything.
It's a sad sight, Sparks. Another noble warrior falls victim to the plague of love. Just look away.
I know they were trying to tie it into the power of love and friendship thing Wiz was talking about, but it lacks finality, man. I know Crash's segment also focused a little on the story, but to that I say, what story? At least in comparison. Look at him, he's just a little guy doing little guy things. Spyro's segment promised us more than that. Imagine getting teased about some epic coming-of-age hero's journey and getting the call to action without any of the payoff. Get this special unknown world crap out of here. We don't need it. This is not a damn ending! It's kinda hard to appreciate how cool Spyro putting his world back together Unleashed style is without even establishing that as a problem in the first place! God, how could two analysis segments clash this much? Save the clashing for the fight. While 3D was expected, I was still pretty curious going into it how Torian would be able to handle such a different looking matchup from his usual outings. Even Godzilla and Gamera both at least stood upright and didn't have nearly as much going on in terms of facial expressions. Makes sense he'd have help from Jerome Rogers Blake again to make it all work. Imagine doing mocap for Spyro of all characters. Though this would be his last time working on the show, so thank you for all your help, Jerome. And if any of you prospective artists out there are interested, check out his Animation Academy. You may even make something as fun as this. Major props to Brandon Yates for making 2 separate tracks for this one. The 2 track arts are even connected in a sort of flipperama kind of way. Reminds me of their official crossover games. Off Bandicoot is a nice homage to Crash's soundtrack and serves the establishing sequence well. A few boxes in a wide open area right before the boss fight. Worst level design ever. But holy shit, I forgot how hard the instrumentation went on Crash and Burn. That is a tasty lick, while still keeping in those classic marimba beats we love. Edward Bosco makes his first appearance on the show in a far cry from his later roles. Woohoo! Right? You get the sense he was having a fun time here, and it's a tough job playing off an opponent who speaks purely in Wacko Warner.
Aw, all I got is a lame spin like that orange marsupial guy. I guess I do kind of sound like him.
And when he turns into Dark Spyro, they put a really cool effect on his voice to sell the transformation.
I'm done with this.
I mean, hey, it's better than getting Dipper Pines to do it instead.
I'm not sure, but I have an inescapable urge to take up 2 parking spaces at once.
Seriously, what the fuck was this show? The character movement is really impressive. Like, sure, mocap is involved, but there are a lot of fluid movements here that lead into so many satisfying interactions that take advantage of Crash's athleticism and Spyro's flight. It managed to remind me of why these two were paired up in the first place. Crash himself steals the show. His facial expressions were on point, and the squash and stretch translates surprisingly well to the 3D environment. That's what I call stepping out of your comfort zone. I also appreciated the amount of mechs and elemental attacks they were able to include. It felt like just the right amount. Any longer, and Crash would have felt too removed from his usual movement style. But any shorter, and we would have gotten a Koopa Clown Car moment. Yes, I am patenting that. Admittedly, the climax is pretty underwhelming. Once Spyro transforms, he defeats Crash in 2 hits. Like shit, even Harada put up more of a fight. And it's pretty bold of the analysis to spend most of its time trying to justify how close the matchup was, only to then throw it all out the window with the Aether Breath and call it a day. What was that about both of them being too damn tough? If you're a fan of Crash who's salty about this episode, I kinda see where you're coming from. This matchup was supposed to be silly fun, and the fight captures that greatly for the first 90% of it. Minus the death, but that look of sheer horror on Spyro's face kills me. But then Spyro just goes nope as Crash sizzles out, and much like this episode. I know he's not exactly on the level of characters like Bugs and Popeye, but don't forget to show this episode to people who think Toon Force is overpowered. Don't get me wrong, this episode is pretty fun overall, but man, is it held back by some confused analysis segments and a really lame ending, both in the fight and results. I know it's an unfair comparison, but this episode makes me appreciate the way Shredder vs. Silver Samurai handled the whole 2 characters are dead even, but one of them has that one OP thing that makes everything we talked about before moot thing 10 billion times better. Though I do like the detail of Spyro not turning back to normal since none of his friends were there to help him, which they mentioned in his rundown. It's without a doubt the best episode we've covered so far, but I have a feeling this season is capable of much more. Oh shit, I forgot the next time was even a thing.
So it is a sword, just happens to function like a key in very specific situations.
Or it's a key all the time, and when you stick it in people, it unlocks their death.
Sora versus Pit. I wasn't joshing. I constantly forget they ever made this one, which is kinda wild to say for such a highly requested episode. And Kid Icarus Uprising is one of my favorite games of all time, with the worst control scheme ever. Please, oh please, give us a Switch 2 port, please! Sora's analysis was surprisingly straightforward, or unsurprisingly if we're just going off the context of this season. Though that certainly didn't stop our hosts from making the obligatory Kingdom Hearts is confusing comments. As an outsider to the world's greatest rhythm game disguised as a JRPG, the biggest highlight for me was this edit of the T-Rexes getting launched into space. I could just imagine that astronaut thinking, how long have I been out? I would give them leeway for the sparse journey coverage given it's, well, Kingdom Hearts, but then Pit faces the same pitfall too. the Kid Icarus rundown. I think you guys had time to sneak in some story beats and talk about Pit as a character as opposed to more lampshading moments. It's Kid Icarus! What do you mean this had more lampshading bits than the Kingdom Hearts character? And just like Sora's rundown, this random space guy managed to be the most memorable part. Almost makes up for the out-of-place cabbages clip from earlier. Look, just cause I'm one of the few people who like the Sokka clip in Thor's episode, didn't mean I was gonna excuse this one too. I feel like I've been going crazy these past few episodes. Like, do I even know what I'm looking for in an analysis section anymore? So I went back to watch the sections for Dante vs. Bayonetta since they had a similar thing of covering complicated stories while focusing mainly on the weapons and feats. And yeah, they're still as fun as I remembered. Not perfect by any means, the endings were still pretty lacking, but the use of clips and subtle nods to their personalities leading into how they fight go a long way. It also helps that Wiz and Boomstick actually sound like they wanna be there. We'll see if this element improves later on, but for now, let's get to the fight. Nick's Goofy impression is both the most blessed and cursed thing in this show's history. I'm so conflicted.
What he said? Attaboy, Sora!
But that's not the case for me when it comes to the rest of the cast. Bryce Papenbrook and Justin Briner as Sora and Pit respectively may be two of the most natural casting decisions this show has ever made.
Time to end this! You said it! Let's take this to the next level!
These two are juggernauts of the brave young heroes coming into their own archetype. And I honestly can't think of more fitting voice actors for this episode beyond actually getting Haley Joel Osment and Anthony Del Rio themselves. They have some pretty fun trash talk and some really awesome battle grunts throughout. This battle takes great advantage of its fast pace. Even when time itself is put on hold, not a second felt wasted. Moments like Pit stopping for a moment to geek out over Sora's abilities felt right at home. Zack and Curvin felt like a dynamic duo when it came to this fight choreography. And Chris Baston was great on the sprite art. But whoever was the one that drew this frame in particular is frankly the standout of the season so far. I freaking love this show's close-ups. The weapon and magic variety was certainly appreciated, though having Pit use the upper dash arm 3 times with none of the subsequent times being able to match the impact of the first for obvious reasons threw me out of it. Like, you probably could have given him a couple other things to use for these moments, or at least save that awesome close-up shot for the last hit to help sell the battle's escalation. And the fact that Pit goes into his silver armor only to get one shot immediately after is complete bullshit. Though the following moment manages to make up for it. Goofy just watched someone who looks seemingly around Sora's age get murdered in cold blood and can't stop smiling. War does a lot to a man. Dog thing. This battle needed a lighthearted tone anyway, so it's certainly preferable over Sora breaking down crying or whatever. From what I've seen, these characters are way too used to killing for that to be a factor. Unlocking Heaven is a great track, though I'd recommend listening to the remaster since Brandon's cat somehow destroyed one of his mixing monitors at the time he was making the original version of this song. Hey, I love cats, but I know what those motherfuckers are capable of. That story does not surprise me one bit. I like this one. It's an overall pleasant animation that makes up for the somewhat blasé analysis and an admittedly slow start to the choreography. I love how they claim Sora's laser could reach the moon despite showing a clip where the laser was clearly stopping mid-air to hit this lock on the ground. I know interpretation is real when it comes to verses, but how the hell do you miss that? A lot better than I remember, though I'm still waiting for this season to really wow me. I need to have my mind blown, like Pit. Preferably the figurative way.
Zombie College.
Leon Kennedy versus Frank West. Okay, if this episode manages to be half as good as that Next Time music, we're in for a 5-star meal right now. Leon's is a pretty standard Arsenal coverage and an okay introduction to Resident Evil on the show. How have we yet to make a return to this franchise after so long? Though to this one's credit, we at least get a little bit of psyche insight on how the thrill of fighting and chaos is what keeps Leon going, as well as an obscure reference to the JFK assassination. Sure. Frank's, though, is pretty fun for the most part. By now, if an episode point blank says this character pulled off some crazy feats as a transition to the feats section, then I get a pretty good idea of how the episode feels like treating its characters, quote unquote. But Frank's is better at weaving his journey throughout the rundown than most this season, and paints a clear picture of his ambitious, self-serving nature while also having fun running down the insane amount of weapons he has at his disposal. Hell, they even mention how he and Leon used the same exact pistol in a pretty funny, hey, wait a minute moment. Capcom characters really do seem to have a knack for bottomless arsenals. It certainly makes for fun TV, as does this animation. Jeepers, is it a hell of a blast. I can see why they went for sprites over 3D, as getting that weapon variety across would have been much more complicated. This is one of the most video gamey fights we've gotten in a while, and I mean that as a good thing. Like, this battle knows it's a video game episode and embraces it, down to the arcade cabinet Easter eggs and the different Capcom references we get throughout. But more than that, it's a really fun dynamic of straightforward versus unconventional weaponry. They do a really good job suspending your disbelief on why Leon doesn't just immediately shoot him, as Frank is constantly catching Leon off guard with his tricks and even the momentum of his shopping cart. With schmovement like that, it's no wonder Torian originally wanted this episode. Bravo, Luis and Kid! They capture the fun vibe of creating insane weapons to battle the undead with the dynamic constantly ramping up in silliness. And that sense of fun goes double for the zombie sequence. Remember the zoo bit from Black Panther vs. Batman? Well, this is that, but actually fitting and not pace-breaking. Sure, they'll stop to kill a couple zombies, but Leon and Frank are still pretty focused on each other. And I love how most of the zombie kills come from shots intended for themselves. It's just a really cool set piece to help give their fight dynamic more layers. Their personalities have a nice clash as well. Rico Fajardo and Austin Lee Matthews play off each other great.
No one's supposed to be here.
Never stopped me before, pal.
Give it up, man. You can't keep up with me.
Wanna bet? I've covered wars, you know.
That's nice, but I fought them.
This exchange in particular is probably the best comeback they could have written for Leon to rebut Frank's most iconic line. Admittedly, the Mega Man transformation doesn't do that much, though I do love the frantic expression on Frank here as he's covering the bomb. But they do get quite a lot of mileage out of the exosuit. Imagine a final form actually getting to do things for the climax. But as cool as it is to see Leon use his surroundings to maneuver out of the ice NATO along with Frank's glorious dad jokes, the death just kinda happens. It's hard for me to even say I dislike it. It's just a standard explosion that happens. Oh my god, not even the good episodes can have fun deaths. Also, the fight track, Resonant Rising, how long did it take you to come up with that name, is serviceable, but not one I feel the need to re-listen to on its own. But those issues did not take away from my enjoyment of this battle as a whole. It has a lot to offer Capcom fans and fully capitalizes on the unique dynamic these two have as well as the zombie apocalypse setting. If Nick was there for fireside chats during an actual apocalypse, I think that'd make everyone's day a little bit brighter. Quiet, sweetie. I know you're bleeding out, but nervous Nick is on right now. Don't you know he's the voice of a generation? Well, not your generation, obviously. That shit was long doomed even before zombies started popping up. It may be gradual, but we're clearly seeing a steady improvement in this season. So hopefully we can keep the ball rolling into something spectacular.
You're trying to mess with me. Get out of my head. Get out of my head! Get out of my head!
You're in my head! Nobody's in my head!
Doctor Strange versus Dr. Fate. Okay, if ever there was an episode that needed to be spectacular, it was this one, considering it's two of the most powerful magic users of comics. But with how we've been on a consistent incline lately, I'm actually low-key excited to see how they're gonna handle a Marvel vs. DC episode. I think we've had enough refreshing video game matchups for me to feel cleansed on that front. These analysis sections were pretty great at making these two feel like crazy powerful wizards capable of anything. Though I do slightly prefer Strange's side for delving into his character more. I love how Steven has this detailed and compelling backstory about coming to grips with his life-ruining injury and becoming a protector of the world after shutting it out for so long. Meanwhile, Kent's side is like, hey, sorry I killed your dad. Want to be a superhero?
Would I?
Alright, bet. Have some puberty.
My body! I'd take a goddad over an ordinary one any day. But really, I'd just take any dad.
Hold it! I've spotted an irregularity!
All I ever got from my dad was a sore cheek.
Checkmate death battle. Your mecha goose is cooked. The important thing is that we were taken on a really cool journey across multiple comics that confounds the mind and even got me a little intrigued in their stories. This respect thread style we've been plagued with for a while works best for comics after all. But even then, we've seen in this review how boring that can still turn out. So props to Sean for crafting a script that covers the grandness of these two titans of magic without hesitation. With how epic these analysis segments made our fighters out to be, it sure would be a shame if the animation didn't live up to all that hype. It's a death battle! battle episode tackling 2 reality warping magic users capable of infinite wonders from Marvel and DC. What did you think was gonna happen? Okay, to be fair, I'm not saying the animation is bad, far from it. There are a lot of things to appreciate here. Strange Fate, okay seriously, these titles are starting to get on my nerves, has a pretty neat vibe that matches the trippy nature of the art direction. Damon Mills and Mike Varker give admirable performances as Strange and Fate respectively.
Taste the flames of the 14!
Fool, you are merely a doctor. I am a god.
And both felt like true masters of their craft. Even if the reason for this fight happening came down to pettiness at the end of the day.
It has come to my attention that there are 2 Sorcerer Supremes in this existence. I am here to resolve this embarrassment.
Somebody has issues!
The effects on all the magic spells weren't half bad. We get one of the most extra wormhole sequences I've seen for what simply amounts to a teleports behind you move. Speaking of, the sequence of them battling through different worlds was obviously fun, but not without its own little issues. You'll notice this battle is about 4 minutes long, which is good for something of this scale. But some of that runtime can be chalked up to mini pace breakers that don't feel intended. Like when they show up in the cantina. It's a pretty funny moment. But after you're done laughing, Fate just kinda grunts, stands there for a bit. All the while, Strange is just waiting for Fate to make his move since it's his turn to attack in the script. That's the kind of issue live action productions are supposed to go through. Wink wink, nudge nudge. These guys are cartoons, what's their excuse? And as cool as the back and forth is in the beginning, once we end up on the Dragon Eel thing, a bit of an issue crops up that gives us the other reason why this battle is longer than most this season. They don't really do anything, at least when compared to the first half. Fate loses his helmet and responds by clocking Steven, which is pretty based. He then gets tied up and is allowed by Steven to monologue for some reason, giving Kent ample time to level up using the power of gender. Why should we limit ourselves to 2 when we could have literally all of them? Makes life far more interesting if you ask me. So Steven's solution to this is to go astral and then die. Sure we didn't skip a step? Everything I talked about starting at the dragon takes up half of the animation. Do you see where I'm coming from here? It becomes less about the spell casting back and forth and more a dick measuring contest of who can fire the flashiest fuck-off laser. And considering only one of them got a black box scaling them to infinity, this was supposed to be one of the close ones, right? Beyond that, the choreography is kinda boring when you look past all the trippy effects. The characters get a couple cool moments, but it's a little jarring to call it the Battle of the Sorcerer Supreme and then have a scene where one of them goes ghost into the other just to get jumped. Like, what exactly was his plan here? And why did he disintegrate in such a convoluted way? And as cool as a lot of the visuals are on paper, the actual character sprites feel pretty stiff outside of the close-up shots. When Strange is zooming around, it feels like he has a stiff metal pipe of a body with paper arms flapping in the breeze. Sure, you could argue this battle was going for spectacle as its main priority, but even when coming from that angle, this is one of the battles most affected by time, as later episodes starring reality warpers, magic users, and even just plain old telekinetics have taken the reins from Strange vs. Fate out to the farthest reaches of space without even needing the reindeer. To put it more simply, there are a bunch of episodes, hell, standalone sequences, that could be described as this, just better. Not really this episode's fault. If anything, it should be praised for laying the groundwork for these future mystifying matchups. Just another factor that can't really be ignored. So even though this episode isn't quite my cup of tea, it has just enough respect going for it to be on the higher end of my mid-zone, for what it counts. Sorta like Naruto vs. Ichigo in my eyes. Oh wait, this episode reminded me of Jotaro vs. Kenshiro. Never mind, put it below the mistake.
Wacky waving inflatable.
Ha! Nothing can stop me now.
No! Ryu vs. Jin. Here it is. As enjoyable as Crash vs. Spyro is, this is the kind of no-holds-barred beatdown we were all expecting Torian to deliver for Season 5. But even more significant than that, this was the episode touted at the time as his big swan song on Death Battle before moving on to new projects. Sort of. He would work on other episodes for later seasons in more of a supervisor and collaborator role, and I believe he outright animated a couple shots in Optimus vs. Gundam. But that does not take away from the significance of this development. It shouldn't be underestimated how influential Torian's work was on the show. He's the kind of visionary who manages to transcend that thankless, faceless animator role and garner a fan base all their own through their work ethic, creativity, and heart. I don't think it's a stretch to call him the most iconic animator to have worked on the show. So for this episode to be announced as his final lead animator job on the channel, it obviously had a lot of eyes on it. We all wanted his final hurrah to go out with a bang, and I cannot think of a more perfect matchup for the time this was unfolding. As a returner, Ryu had been gone long enough for a new angle and style to approach his analysis be on the table, and generally speaking, I like it when veteran characters get to be animated in a new medium from before. Plus, I don't think anyone was going to complain about Torian's last big project utilizing hand-to-hand street fighting in its purest and most raw form to date. Alright, enough glazing. We haven't even started talking about the episode yet. Analysis sections aren't too shabby. And by that I mostly mean Ryu's. They did a really good job putting me in his non-existent shoes on his path to not only avenging his master, but struggling to balance the light and dark within himself. I think it helps that these forms are gameplay mechanics that inherently tell you a lot about Ryu as a character. I mean, shit, just look at them. So the balancing of character study and flashy moves was practically gift wrapped for the team. Jin's isn't quite as elegant. I'm sure it helps that Street Fighter has a relatively more straightforward story, but the story coverage is still quite clumsy here. It's fine at first when they're just talking about Jin, his mom, and Heihachi, but as it goes on, we're suddenly bombarded with a bunch of characters for scaling purposes, and an outsider's probably thinking, wait, Jin has a dad? Would have been nice to know about their relationship. Plus, they don't really talk about Jin's personality until the very end of the analysis and hand-wave him starting a world war hard enough to make Mewtwo vs. Shadow blush. Also, this Angel line is pretty funny in hindsight. Damn, now I feel kinda bad for this matchup. That's a seriously missed opportunity if I ever saw one. Oh yeah, spoilers for Tekken 8, I guess. Oh, whatever, you people had plenty of time to play it. I'll admit, the idea of Boomstick's dog, Jack Spaniel, becoming a devil in front of him only for Boomstick to shrug it off got a chuckle out of me. Though, much like how Jin unlearned the Mishima style, I wish I could unlearn this out-of-nowhere Wolverine part.
Give me the Wolverine!
None of us edited this, by the way, that's in the actual episode. What the fuck indeed. Overall, Jin's segment is flawed, but fine, and Ryu's is up there with Frank West and Doctor Strange. But that's not what we're here for. It's Ryu versus Jin. Even the episode's tagline knows this. Not sure why they changed it. Elephant in the room. Considering my visceral reactions to Black Panther vs. Batman, Jotaro vs. Kenshiro, and etc., the use of voice clips is infinitely done better here. In fact, I'd argue it's the single best use of voice clips in the series. Even better than Ryu's last episode, and that's saying a lot, mind you. From the very first line out of Ryu's mouth, I'm sold on this decision.
Talk is cheap.
Damn right. We didn't hire voice actors because we simply didn't need them. Kyle Hebert and Brad Swale are so goated with the acting sauce that it'd be a missed opportunity not to showcase them. Especially Kyle. Dude's practically the Charles Martinet of the fighting game genre, so consider it adaptation bonus points. With characters like these, it's smart to focus mostly on the action, but even then, they cherry pick just the right amount of existing lines to still get the personalities across and even a bit of a story. What story, you might be asking? Like Ryu said, talk is cheap. It's the choreography and character animation where you can find it, i.e. the heart of battle. Jin's brooding and has an aggressive fighting style, while Ryu is a lot more composed, encouraging Jin to push through his own limits before exploding as the action escalates. And that's gotta be the best part about this fight, the escalation. After that clean as hell transition to color, we start off with some of the most basic hand-to-hand the show has ever done. Hardly any flashy moves to speak of. And I freaking love it. The advantage state keeps getting passed around, and there's so much to glean from the way both fighters approach each other. Jin's attacks feel angrier, at times dirty, while Ryu relies on smart parries and attack misdirection to get the upper hand. And once he finally whips out the flashy fighting game moves we're familiar with, he kinda schools Jin, pissing him off enough to go into his devil form. It's a brutal as hell beatdown, so much so that it transcends the boundaries of death battle itself. And you guys thought we wouldn't have a Ruby episode this year. Admittedly, it's pretty jarring for them to transition into an arena that not only was made very obviously and specifically for another show, but also has very little to do with the setting they were fighting in previously. But who cares? Evil Ryu is here now and it's sick as hell! I may or may not get some flack for this, but as much as I adore Snake vs. Sam and Balrog vs. TJ, I would posit this sequence right here on the Falling Rocks to be the single best choreography showcase the show has ever done. It's yet to be topped for me on that factor alone. No point in describing it really, it's one of those things where you just kinda have to sit back, appreciate it. And posted out of context on TikTok is a fake attempt to seem altruistic towards animation when really you're just trying to get easy impressions for doing literally nothing and not even bothering including a link to the original video. Oh shit, did I just go there? This shot of their punches clashing going back to the black and white color palette for a split second is without a doubt my favorite. And once all is said and done, it seems like Jin has the upper hand. Once again, it's impressive how brutal they get without showing blood. But we've seen Ryu vs. Scorpion. We all know what's coming next. Ryu gets the power of nothingness and it's so cool looking. Ignore that. It's just like his last episode. He then proceeds to one-shot Jin and it's really underwhelming. It's just like his last episode. But don't worry, Jin still has his angel form for one last— Oh, wait, he didn't have that yet. The episode's over. Fuck. At least Ryu vs. Scorpion, despite also having a shitty death, had the little fake-out moment to keep things interesting. Here, it's just played completely straight. I think now's a good time to mention that Fight Like a Devil is fucking awesome. When you hear it by itself, it's kick-ass. The amount of in-depth fighting game mechanic references they make in this rap battle portion is crazy. But seeing the way it escalates along with the fight makes it even better. Not to mention they got freaking Omega Sparks to rap on it. The same guy who performed I'm Back to Rise. Yes, it is as amazing as it sounds. He and Theirwolf mesh together so seamlessly. And having him provide original vocals to Torian's Swan Song episode is so beautifully poetic. Honestly, the music hard carries this climax. That guitar riff is godlike. But it's still kinda lame having that epic back and forth with some of the most intricate and well thought out hand-to-hand I've ever seen animated get decided by a single blue laser. What is this, a superhero movie in the early 2010s? For real though, if it was just treated like your typical disintegration kind of thing, I'd probably enjoy this death just fine. The visuals and sound design are just as impactful as the rest of the fight, and it's ludicrous to demand even more hand-to-hand from this battle with how much they've been pushing the boundaries. All that would have been more than easy for me to accept if it weren't for the damn body. Boomstick says there's nothing left in Jin's chest right after, but I don't know how we're supposed to interpret that from the back shot. From the behind shot and Red Emma's paint smear trail. We clearly see the laser is powerful enough to go through him, yet there's hardly any sign of damage on his backside. Ironically, I bet it would have been easier from an animation standpoint to cut back to no body at all and just some smoke left behind. Sure, it'd be a ripoff of Lex's death, but that would make more sense to me as the result of a giant fuck-off laser than whatever the hell happened to him here. As a result, the suspension of disbelief is too muddled for me to appreciate everything else about the climax. And it's not even that long of a shot. I know the results are pretty contentious, especially with how divisive compositing and scaling is. But considering how integral Akuma is to Ryu's story and the fact that they have been building him up throughout his analysis beforehand, the latter at least checks out to me. Can't speak for everything else though. I adore this episode. So then why does it make me so angry? They were so goddamn close to a 10. Hell, if the analysis segments were a bit more refined, I could have easily given this an 11. But Jin's segment is just too messy, and even Ryu's isn't without its oddities. Like how little fanfare they give his defeat of Akuma at the end. And speaking of endings, this might be one of the most egregious examples of a perfect fight getting bogged down by the death. It's not even that bad, it's just disappointing! If they gave this episode a rematch, I'm sure a final round of their ultimate good guy forms would be sick. Plus, it'd let Ryu's power of nothingness actually get to do something for a change. Really living up to your name there. Then again, the legacy of everything that came before the death would be so treacherous to try and match, let alone surpass, that I doubted it'd even be worth it, quite frankly. This is by far the closest to a 10, but not a 10 episode I've covered yet. So, take pride in the good you did accomplish, Ryu vs. Jin. I consider it a worthy final episode episode for Torian, but don't let that distract you from everyone else who worked on it. We've got newcomers Christina and David, as well as the entire crew of people that made this battle look as crisp as it does. Like, as much as I don't vibe with the finisher, I can't deny how instrumental the use of color grading is in making this transformation look incredible. The difference in lighting and VFX between this and our last 3D episode is like night and day. Devil and angel, evil and nothing! The show's 3D battles would still live on without him, and it's not like this is the last time he's helped out, but I do think it is safe to consider this the end of an era, as well as the best swan song of the show. Not like there was much competition, but still. So thank you, Torian, for everything you've done for this community. May you go on to do bigger and grander things and continue to wow us with your knack for violence and indiscriminate backflips. Sayonara, Torian. Sayonara. Then again...
Man, I don't even have an opinion.
Well, you gotta have an opinion. I mean, do you think that God came down from heaven and stopped...
Oh, what the fuck's happening now?
Watcha! Samurai Jack versus Afro Samurai. In case it wasn't fucking obvious, I used that clip because Phil Lamar plays the guy that got shot in that scene, and Samuel L. Jackson is there. Also, fun fact, Phil even voices the teenage version of Afro. Cool? Cool. I don't like Afro Samurai. Figured I might as well rip the bandage off now to let you guys know. I just find it kinda trite and boring. Samurai Jack, though, I adore. It's the kind of show that manages to be both grounded, having some of the most mature presentation I've seen in a kid's cartoon with how much it plays around with show don't tell storytelling, while at the same time having episodes about Jack sneaking around naked looking for his clothes and having to help a dragon that can't stop farting.
It will take you to the dragon's lair!
Where will the other one take me?
Space Ace!
What kid is gonna get that reference? Speaking of, when I wasn't watching SpongeBob or having the remote stolen from any of my sisters, Cartoon Network was usually my go-to channel growing up. Except for that one time when they were doing a bunch of live action shit, but we don't talk about that. So I was really excited to see a character from that channel finally appear on Death Battle. And Jack himself is just such a natural fit for a show like this. I'm honestly surprised they didn't bring him on sooner. Though I'm glad they didn't, and we'll soon see why. First off, I know this was a highly requested fight, but it couldn't just be because they both have samurai in their names, right?
The samurai is one of the most prestigious and dangerous. So let's pit two of the best of them in a fight to the death.
Oh, I guess it is. Well then, Jack's analysis is so great. I love how they start out by quoting the intro to the show. We get a nod to the poultry science degree while footage of that one time Jack was turned into a chicken plays in the back. Told you this show's kinda weird. And we even get a decent character analysis towards the end. If they did it today, they no doubt would have delved into his PTSD more. But the transition from saying he's a Boy Scout to one of the rawest battle cries in cartoon history for the end clip tells you everything you need to know about Jack and why he's such a beloved character.
Who else wants some?
Oh, so chilling. He's best boy to a fault, but there is nothing scarier than a patient man who's finally been pushed over the edge. It's pretty dumb that they don't talk about Ashy at all. At least Cinder got name dropped for Spyros. But they at least mention the Scotsman and how he and Boomstick have the exact same handicap, or upgrade depending on how you look at it. Though I can see that bit being confusing for some folks at the time who weren't familiar with the canon designs of Wiz and Boomstick. If only there was a way to solve that. So yeah, while a better ending would have been appreciated, something they had more than enough time to include, this is still without question my favorite analysis segment so far. And you know it's not because I'm biased, because look at how I reacted towards the other characters this season from animated shows I enjoy. Like, if they had managed to screw up a fucking Samurai Jack rundown of all things, I would have considered calling it quits at that point. Afro's is pretty good too. Paints a nice contrast in their fighting styles and how Afro's not afraid to fight a little dirty. But goddamn, this is the 4th episode in a row to make a Boomstick's dad joke. Ooh boy, they planted the hate for that gag real early, huh? Seeing Afro's analysis ironically just kinda reminded me of why I don't like Afro Samurai to begin with. The headband lore being way too vague, Ninja never shutting up, and Afro himself coming off as a boring one-dimensional protagonist. I get that's sort of the point with this character, it just got old for me. And keep in mind, the show's like 5 episodes. I'm glad that Death Battle doesn't go too far in the lampshading moments, obviously, just a personal bias. If you like Afro Samurai, then more power to ya. Just wasn't for me. Also, anyone else notice the obvious audio cut here.
Sandals!
But it's time for the main event. And if you're a longtime viewer, I bet you know exactly what story I'm about to tell. But that won't stop me from being the 10 billionth person to recount it because it's just so damn good. Rooster Teeth had a little meet and greet party that our Death Battle boys were invited to. And at said party, we were hit with a move this show hadn't seen since the breakdance sequence in Deadpool vs. Deathstroke. Luis, the show's animation director, promised Ben, while completely smashed, that he wanted to make a fully hand-drawn battle involving Samurai Jack, despite that not being anywhere on the original planned list for the upcoming 5th season. But Death Battle is a show all about risks, so Ben took him up on that. And the next day, Luis stayed true to his word and got to work making a fight all by himself for the most part, with a little bit of help from Jerky on backgrounds. But still, a lesser man would have backed out of it after the influence was gone, and that would have been totally understandable. But Luis is just built different, my friend. Much like the samurai, he had his honor to uphold, which is how we got this. Nope, not worth it. One person. Smokey vs. McGruff was a whole studio. This was one freaking person! Again, with a little bit of help, but much like how Toby Fox got a little bit of help. How did he do it? By working smarter, not harder. Except still harder because there were apparently plenty of sleepless nights, but they used some very clever techniques to make this style work for a relatively low budget. For starters, the matchup choice is ideal. It's just two guys with swords. No reality warping, no crazy spells, no stupid-ass ninjas. It really is just two mortal men who use swords covered in blood, oil, trauma, joy, pain, love, loss, and all the flavors of a tragic history that our two warriors picked up on immediately.
Your sword smells of blood. So does yours.
There are a lot of ways this moment could be interpreted, and I've got my own little theory. To me, it's almost like a switch has flipped inside both of them. They've been fighting for so long despite almost never seeking out a fight themselves. But you can be damn sure they'll be the ones to finish it. So with all that violence and turmoil programmed in them from such early ages, they don't really need a specific reason to fight per se. It's who they are, and they're both at points in their journeys where they've come to accept that as an inevitability.
Alright, let's do this.
I like to imagine the Jack we're seeing here is at the very end of the show. After losing Ashy, he tries his best to hold on to hope. But every now and then, he needs to go out on his own for a period of self-reflection. Even if that means journeying out on his own like the old days. Or new days, depending on your perspective. After all, his time in the future makes up such a vast majority of his life by now that it'd be hard to imagine him simply turning that off. That's why the smell of blood was all it took to send him back into full-on warrior mode. Something Afro is more than willing to oblige a warrior just as deadly as himself. Despite the fact Jack doesn't have the number 2 headband giving him the right to fight number 1. Alright, enough philosophy, fight time! Another way they get around the budget is the choice in arena. Not only is the bridge such an iconic set piece, the misty backgrounds means there's not much to worry about beyond making the action look as clean as it does. Being another samurai episode, it takes a page out of Shredder vs. Arata's book by making the swords feel like dangerous sticks of death. The incredible sound design on their clashes, the close shaves, Jack's hat getting split in half, but they take things a step further here by actually throwing in some successful hits beyond simple melee. There's some actual battle wounds throughout, and it's intense as hell. But this battle isn't just mindless action. They're very good at showing the difference in discipline as Afro blinds Jack, only for the latter to prove that sight is completely optional. In general, they have some awesome nods to Jack's training with references both subtle and extremely blatant.
Huh, you jump good.
Oh,
Thank you?
This moment is so amazing. Afro has more personality in this single exchange than he did in his entire source material. You get the sense that he was genuinely impressed for a moment, but soon realizing he could use this opening to his advantage and finally get a solid hit in, causing Jack to switch gears after his hair poofs out in this raw as hell comeback. Devontae Johnson has an excellent stoic tough guy voice for Afro, and Kaiji Tang absolutely nails the mannerisms Jack is so beloved for, getting across his cinnamon bun side as well as the unbridled fury locked deep within. Get it? 'Cause he got no bride.
I miss my wife, Tails. I miss her a lot.
Okay, so slight spoilers for the rest of this ranking, but I doubt it's really much of one considering we're about halfway through. Season 5 has a serious problem with its death scenes, that being, they suck. A lot. Not a single one has been good up to now. The closest to passable we've gotten was Bruce's headless body being chucked into your mom. And after how disappointing the last entry was, you better believe I'm happy to finally have some good fucking food. It all comes to a head in the final showdown. A one-stroke duel was the only way a battle like this could have ended. But they do such a good job at raising the stakes with the bridge collapsing and both fighters scrambling for their weapons. I legit feared for Jack's life here. I did not want my boy to lose. And for a second, it seems like he does. This is one of the most brutal moments of the show without being a straight up death. The sound design on his arm falling off is so meaty, and that scream from Kaiji felt so raw. But then, you begin to notice some grunting from the other side of the battlefield. That, my friends, is how you do the one-stroke duel. It's like the way Ryu vs. Strider handled the trope, with the brutality turned up to have fun sleeping tonight, kiddies levels of holy shit. But hey, thanks to Jack's 5th season, this level of brutality didn't feel out of place for him. Not to mention him coldly walking off into the horizon, likely to get a sick-ass robot arm, with the #1 headband claimed as his theme music bursts into the fray is so badass. And yes, it's better than Yang vs. Tifa because it didn't drop a fucking advertisement over the corpse of the loser. I not only love that it's a custom version, but the idea that someone listened to Watch Out Samurai before the episode dropped and got so blatantly spoiled on the winner like this is just fantastic to me.
I mean, for God's sake, who does that, you stupid piece of—
Honestly, what else is there to say? This episode has quickly become a critical darling over the years, standing the test of time like no other when you get down to the nitty-gritty. I don't even care that it's short. These two have limited movesets as is, and I feel like demanding any more from this animation would be a cruel and unusual treatment of Luisa's dedication here. Wonderful art style that calls back to the show while still having its own voice, intense music, fun use of aspect ratio, and overall cinematic vibe. What more could you ask for? Well, some more thematic parallels in their analyses and endings that capture the bittersweet nature of both shows' finales would have been nice. Really nice, in fact. To the point where I wouldn't mind Jack getting to fight another opponent in the future. You can even talk about the new stuff his game gives him, as it takes a bit of an alternate reality approach to the show's finale that some people even prefer. Don't get me wrong, the show's ending is earned, thematic, all that jazz. I just want to see my boy happy without an asterisk, okay? Are you gonna look at this and tell me I'm wrong? As is, still an all-time classic that deserves to be talked about in the same vein as this series' greatest hits. Ah, fuck, there's no way this season's gonna get as good as this, is there?
Hey, I'm not like other girls. I have snake arms.
Carnage vs. Lucy. Wanna know my reaction to this next time announcement? Oh great, another Marvel versus...
Hello, new franchise.
It's been a hot minute since the show has delved into the realms of obscurity for one of their combatants. And considering it was a series I wasn't even sure how to pronounce, they even have a running gag about this, I was beyond excited to be getting something fresh. Along with the inevitable comments from people claiming to have been fans all along.
When I grow up, I
want to be a gatekeeper just like you. Without a doubt, this was one of the biggest risks the show had taken in a while. And that's right after coming off the hand-drawn episode that only exists from a drunken pact. Here, not only was it risky because of the obscure character, but Elfin Lied is the kind of dark subject matter that rivals shit like Berserk, starring a cute anime girl who fights with invisible snake arms. Not to mention everything surrounding Carnage.
Hey, Carnage, do you know Candy?
Carnage's rundown is pretty damn solid. They did a great job showing how imposing and frankly disturbing his healing factor is, along with his chaotic evil nature. Even Boomstick was disgusted by how horrible he is, which you don't see too often. Sure, the guy killed animals and burned down a freaking orphanage, but his favorite song is Freebird. He can't be that bad. Oh my god, my mind just made a curse connection.
Time, hun. Thanks for the...
Considering how one-track minded Carnage is, it was smart to focus more on his actions and have our hosts be freaked out by them along with his biology. I really like the giant mosquito of death comparison. But holy shit, a 5th consecutive Boomstick's dad joke? Lucy's though? I mean, oh my god, it's like 10 times more terrifying. And I think our hosts agree with me. Even Boomstick was taken aback right after cheering for Lucy to get revenge on those pooch-killing brats. Despite how horrifying and dark this segment is, it actually has my favorite jokes of the season. Minus the vibrator bit that just kinda exists. It mainly comes down to the way our hosts react to everything going on. Chad is in top form here with his line deliveries. And that ending genuinely had me belly laughing. I completely forgot it was even in the episode. I understand story coverage isn't this season's strong suit. Crazy, right? If you're going to undercut your emotionally resonant ending and not even tell us who this supposed person she loved the most even is, then you might as well make it a funny undercut. It took me completely off guard too. How did I manage to forget the gruesome montage of bloody violence set to the Carmen Prelude music by George Bizet? Shame they didn't use the epic Five Nights at Freddy's section. What's important though is I can totally see this getting somebody hooked on Elfin Lied, perhaps even encouraging folks to explore more niche series out there. As for my own niche anime recommendation, definitely check out Elusive Samurai. It's a lot of fun. Speaking of fun, are we sure Luis didn't get drunk again? Maybe it was Zach this time. Basically what I'm trying to say is that calling this a Sprite episode feels like underselling it. The battle's like 50% hand-drawn at least, making this the first in a genre of episodes that I'll henceforth be referring to as Sprite-ish. Sprites are in fact the foundation, but the style varies so much that it ends up becoming its own beast. Something that Raven vs. Twilight and Jotaro vs. Kenshiro dipped their toes in, but here we've taken the full plunge in this bloodbath. I think that was a really smart move for this matchup in particular. The tendrils on both sides end up feeling far more fluid and unsettling as a result. Carnage especially has some wonderful facial expressions that range from shit-eating devil to, oh bother, I seem to be getting eviscerated. Remember how I said Venom was just acting like Carnage and I hated it? Well here, Carnage acts like Carnage and I freaking love it.
Isn't that funny the way those things happen?
He manages to be both terrifying as well as pretty damn funny with how frustrated he gets trying to get anywhere near his opponent. Going from fighting a symbiote to becoming an even scarier version of one, Chris Guerrero knocks it out of the psych ward here, taking what could have been a grating character and making him equal parts scary and entertaining.
It's rain. You're bleeding. Carnage is starving.
That could have been so cringy, but the committed performance sold me on it. And by committed, I mean Cletus should probably be committed. The spooky vibes in this intro alone do the character so much justice. And he isn't even visible for most of it. The off-screen muffled screams of horror and unsettling sound design on the heinous feasting are top-notch nightmare fuel. Not to mention the dark, dreary weather being an appreciated touch. Lucy herself is quite easy to root for because of this. Despite her cold attitude towards killing, it doesn't take long for her to realize the bind she's in. I especially appreciate the way Danielle McRae's voice acting sounds more scared and out of breath as the battle goes on. It's a great attention to detail that keeps the battle from feeling like a one-sided punching bag session for Lucy.
Does it hurt yet? Don't worry. I'll put you out of your misery.
Sure, the most damage Carnage directly causes is a few nicks, but the episode makes it quite clear that he only needs to close in once for a brutal kill. It really is the ultimate battle of attrition. Can Lucy figure out a way to put Carnage down for good before giving in to the exhaustion or even straight up melting herself? The journey leading up to this answer is a masterfully crafted horror spectacle that could potentially work as its own short film. Chorus of Carnage is great at replicating the unsettling nature of the fighters, with droning piano melodies and synth that almost seems discordant at points. Carnage may be a monster, but once Lucy had enough of his bloody hairy routine, she hits him with a pretty raw line and poker face leading to something happening. Probably some kind of an explosion if I were to take a wild fucking guess. But for all we know, Carnage could have used that moment to sneak through a trap door and run away. Can you prove otherwise? Show me the footage! I know vaporization was literally the only way Carnage could have died, but you could have at least, show him getting vaporized. All we get to see is him getting held down by one hand and another hand coming in to punch him, while he's being held down by another hand. Did she move that hand out of the way at the last second or what? I wouldn't be surprised if they just ran out of time or something, and I do like how the explosion was powerful enough to clear the weather as a way of showing the lesser of two evils prevailing. That's cliche as it is, and the look of resigned disgust on Carnage in his final moments is honestly priceless. Also, no quirky one-liner from Lucy. Thank you for allowing stoic characters to be stoic characters. I feel like this episode has gotten kind of a bad rap lately, but other than the death, you people are crazy. Scary and violent characters have been used before, but it's rare to see this show delve into straight up horror, and I think they pulled it off to a T. This is so going towards the top of the list, no notes from me. Again, minus the death. Seriously, Season 5, you're killing me here. Except no, not really.
And that's the damn problem!
Merchandising! Where the real money from the movie is made.
Optimus Prime versus Gundam. You know, it's a little wild to think about the last Gundam episode being from Season 2, and downright loony to think about the last Transformers episode being from Season 1, as well as the fact that it's this one. And I'm just now realizing there's a non-zero chance that I prefer it. Big Zam, have mercy on me if that happens. Prime's is great at making him feel like a badass leader who's enough of a Boy Scout to make even Jack go, damn bro, the adults are gone. You can take just a little puff. And with that joke, I'm now asking you all to create the most epic blunt rotation of fictional characters in the comments. I'll be pinning my favorite. Seriously though, leave it to these two kids franchises realizing how much violence you can get away with as long as it's just robots. Also, go watch Transformers 1 if you haven't. I need a trilogy in my life. I like how this moment with the trailer could have been a lampshading bit and simply left at that, but they used the black box right after to actually explain it, which is refreshing. And the densest material insult was somehow one of the harshest sounding things said between our hosts.
Osmium, the most dense natural material on Earth.
You're the most dense natural material on Earth.
What'd you say?
It really is the child-friendly burns that stick with you the most. The Gundam side is decent, though not quite as memorable. This beam saber gag is subtle enough to make me smile, and it's nice to see another stronger and lighter than titanium metal make an appearance after so long. I like when the writers remember classic running gags like these. Though I do get a sense of favoritism from how much they rail into Amuro's new type background. Even the end clips feel kinda disjointed.
One shall stand, one shall fall.
Die! Because of that, I don't get much of a read on Amuro's personality. I mean shit, Prime's End literally has Wiz quoting lyrics from The Touch, which is like the anthem for Transformers fans. But the really important thing is how much they drill into your head Prime's sense of nobility, honor, and all-around golden retriever good boy energy.
Vile Decepticon.
Well, clearly, this golden retriever was getting some training from Knuckles. Yeah, I'm sure you all know this by now, but the battle script is kind of atrocious. Optimus is far too aggressive here, and I don't think he'd pick a fight with another robot this quickly by assuming it's a Decepticon that he's never met, who doesn't even have the Decepticon branding. Amuro is fine, if a little inconsistent between wide-eyed hero and edgy punk.
I'm just better.
Yeah, at least he's better than Sayla, who only gets 3 lines and is just there to yell in Amuro's and the audience's collective ears. It's a decent attempt at story to try and explain why Amuro's on his own, but...
It's an enemy monster! I told you!
I don't believe this.
I know, grandson. A woman in the military.
Nothing against Lindsay Jones, obviously, and David Matrenga does a good job throughout, selling the direness of the battle. But Richard Barsanos definitely felt like a miscast. I've heard folks say this in the past, and at first it confused me. I thought Richard sounded fine. After all, it's Optimus. All you need is a cool, deep voice and you're set. Except, not really. After watching the original 80s movie, seriously check it out if you haven't, it's incredible. I've come to realize there's much more nuance to it. Peter Cullen makes Optimus sound like a pretty chill guy, honestly. Sure, Richard has the bass, but he lacks the gentleness that makes Optimus sound like a pure-hearted leader you'd be willing to go to hell and back with. It's similar to my frustrations with Raven's voice direction, where it needed hints of light and an overall chill pill. But you know who I'm glad didn't chill out for this episode? The animation team. Look at these visuals! It's their first time in the Unreal Engine, and the whole thing was treated like an official changing of the guard as Torian mostly worked in a supervisor role. The effects on their weapons are so vibrant, which can be said about the entire space section, honestly. But when they end up on Earth, the lighting takes this whole new level of groundedness that makes it almost feel like watching a cutscene from a AAA game. The hand-to-hand is so tight, and they even play into the space versus ground dynamic by having Optimus dominate more in this section with his greater combat experience, whereas in space, Amuro could cause enough damage to destroy Prime's base, as well as the potentially hundreds of Autobots on board. My favorite move from the scuffle is the tire skid kick from Optimus. The sound design on it has so much impact! And we keep cutting to these amazing hand-drawn shots of Amuro as he's trying to strategize around Optimus's bulky frame. The show has never combined 3D and 2D like this before. No, that doesn't count. Sure, Amuro spams his limited shots gun way too much right out the gate. In fact, if you've been counting, he actually fires 17 in the battle, not 16. Oops. And they didn't have time to make a shot of him putting on some sort of cloak to help him survive re-entry, even though they established his mech couldn't survive that alone. But the visuals and choreography pop off so much that it's really easy to ignore. Especially when it's set to easily one of the most iconic tracks of the show. Wings of Iron by Theirwolf Media, featuring percussion from Cameron Sather and fucking legendary vocals from Daniel Vincent Galvin. Remember how we talked about The Touch earlier as being the Transformers anthem? This is in the same tier as that. Capturing the victorious sound of that era's rock and roll ballads was so critical to get right. The kind of music that makes you want to run a marathon. And then Optimus says the thing and... oh yeah, I forgot. This is still a Season 5 episode. Compared to everything we had seen before, the visuals on this explosion are far too dull. And we can't even tell how big it is because there's nothing in the background to compare it to. Something Power Rangers vs. Voltron knew it had to get across for its final explosion to leave an impact. Though, to be fair, even they couldn't match the impact of Prime's radical trick shot. Sure, the force shot of the Gundam helmet looks cool, but once again we've been hit with another awesome looking fight that couldn't stick the final landing. But at least the explosion in Carnage vs. Lucy had actual scenery to get its size and impact across. It also didn't have any of the mischaracterization problems present here. I know these two are completely different episodes, but it goes to show how much I like Carnage vs. Lucy that it can still score so high on my list despite the somewhat limp finisher. With Ryu vs. Jin, the death scene was disappointing. With Prime vs. Gundam, it's more like insult to injury. I still think this episode's good. Like, really good. But that doesn't mean I can forgive its blatant flaws so easily, no matter how beautiful it looks and sounds. Pretty on the surface, but once you actually dig a little deeper, you realize that you may have been slightly ripped off. Now, I gotta give it to the conclusion for its hilariously dark calculation. Oh shit! Amuro's father is getting sucked out into the cold, vast, unknowable horror of space! Based on the measurement of his limp, flailing ragdoll of a body, we can deduce the size of this hole in the wall that led to his demise.
Hey, you idiot, he didn't die there. Instead, he developed oxygen deprivation syndrome from floating in space too long. Then he died 33 episodes later, by falling down a flight of stairs.
Oh, hi Andrew, Raccoon Bro's real-life friend who's an expert of all things Gundam and famously hates this episode.
I find it insulting they chose an unfair nostalgia grab over something like God or New Gundam.
Yeah, save it for trash bin talk. You mind?
Alright, just you wait until they do Char vs. Lelouch. We Gundam fans will have our day in the sun. Sieg Zion!
I should really think about buying a lock. Still though, when you turn your brain off for a bit, I can't deny how happy this episode makes me. But more importantly, Christina and the team did more than enough to prove themselves as worthy successors to Torian. And even as an outsider to both of these franchises, the aesthetic alone got me so excited for the future of 3D on Death Battle. Alright, chalk one more episode off the board. Now all that's left to do is place it on the tier list, and would you look at that? It's below Starscream versus Rambodash after all. Okay, wow. It's below the PSA fight too. How about that? Exactly what I was hoping for, truly. Oh, okay, well, bye everyone.
Yeah, kinda, and I just, look, can I be real with you for a sec?
Sure.
Thanks.
Nightwing versus Daredevil. Oh great, another Marvel versus... Hello, new animation style. I mean, my God, I knew they had an upgrade with their software last time, but the photorealism here is insane. I'd love to see Alloy match that number of polygons. All animated by a studio named Ismahawk, it seems. They must have wizards or something over there. They'd better watch their backs before Studio Mappa comes knocking on their door. Alright, I'll get off of this tangent. But if you're gonna describe this battle as being animated by Ismahawk, you're gonna get the back's ass. I like how the opening celebrates the fact that these two are street tiers. We don't get above average humans all too often. One of the stories on Dick's end even feels like an expansion on Frank's feat of sleep deprivation. And I find relatively normal people doing athletic shit that's ever so slightly out of the ordinary more easy to be impressed by. Who knows? Maybe the things these guys pull off could be done in real life if someone was crazy, cool enough to try it. Fuck Batman. You just gotta believe in yourself, kids. You just gotta believe. I'm gonna get in trouble, aren't I? I could have done without the Friday clip, but overall, these segments were pretty well written for comic characters. I especially like how in-depth they get with Matt's powers as a nice contrast to Dick's where they focused more on his athleticism. I like the subtlety of Boomstick saying he has no relation to a guy named Stick, and I could accept the out-of-nowhere horniness at the end of Dick's analysis since it's a neat little nod to Jocelyn who's becoming more of a realized character. If anything, I'm impressed that they decided to be this explicit with it. Poor Nightwing isn't allowed to have a versus battle without a reference to his genitals, is he? Well, let's see how Death Battle handles their own live-action outing. I can't really think of a better choice for their first matchup. Not only do the guys that they're working with already have half of the costumes at home already, with how popular the Daredevil show was, at the time, live action really was the best way to rep him accurately in the eyes of the general audience. That wasn't insensitive, was it? But even if they weren't using Nightwing, Ismahawk was such an excellent choice for the show to collab with. They've dabbled a bit in verses themselves, even having their own hot takes on matchups we've talked about here before. Hey, wait a minute, you're not allowed to disagree with Death Battle? Didn't you know that's a rule of the internet? As for the fight itself, it holds up pretty decently for being Death Battle's first live-action outing. When it comes to indie productions, it is so hard for live-action films to escape that low-budget amateur vibe. Something that's pretty easy to pick up on subconsciously with elements like the performances, the visual effects, the pacing, the sound design. And many other factors that are so damn difficult to account for. But you can tell these are filmmakers who have been passionate about their craft for many years. The costumes especially elevate this fight to a league not too far off from what you'd see on CW. Arguably better in some regards. Jeremy, Jack, y'all gotta open up some kind of superhero boutique. I'll even sweeten the deal and pre-order my own. Give me the coolest, most impractical cape you've got. Childhood warnings be damned. The actors also do a great job. Tyler Tackett is cool as a cucumber, and even if he didn't look like a mirror reflection of the guy, Tyler's still quite good at matching the movement quirks Charlie Cox is known for. And of course, Danny Shepard brought his all here. The dude is so passionate about the character, it would have been criminal for Death Battle to team up with Ismahawk and not get him as Dick. A real Richard move. I like how they even used footage of Danny in the analysis. Definitely check out Nightwing the series if you haven't already. Death Battle even borrowed clips from it as far back as Deathstroke's episode. Oh, how foolish we were to ignore the signs. So this battle looks good, sounds good, they must have knocked it out of the park first try, right? Well, that's not to say there isn't room for improvement. Remember how I said the best fight scenes feel like a dance in Balrog vs. TJ combo? Well, I was referring to the choreography and how it all flows together, sometimes even timing up with the music. Well, this battle definitely has choreography, plenty of fancy flips, and even a bit of environmental destruction. Wow, indeed. But there's a difference between a battle having choreography and feeling choreographed. Sure, the battles of this show, hell, this season, have a rhythm to them, no doubt. But there's still a level of brutality and tension there that is so much harder to capture with real people involved. Remember Looney Tunes back in action? That movie was great. About 50% of the time, at least. Try as they might, those fleshy humans were fighting an uphill battle keeping up with the inky tunes. A lot of this battle feels like the actors are either waiting for their cues or holding back just enough out of fear of causing real damage. Which, if you've seen some of the best martial arts movies ever made, you know is gonna have to happen at least to an extent if you want it to feel real. Do you honestly think Jackie Chan pulled this shit off without having a bit of his cage rattled? I'm not asking for them to kill each other, but filmmaking is like a magic act at the end of the day. And it's just inherently easier to suspend my disbelief in an animated world, especially for lower budget productions and even more especially for fight scenes. Goodness me, we've seemed to have reached the part of our tussle where I perform a backflip. Would you mind giving me a little boost, my dearest compatriot?
Why not at all, my finely dressed fellow. Oh dear, the cameraman is having another one of his fits. Shall we help him?
I kid mostly. I have a great affinity for stunt performers. So hats off to the Arhat Orphan Brotherhood stunt team for their work here. Hell, Tyler even did all of his stunts himself. Badass. Outside of the hand-to-hand, they managed to pull off some fantastical things in this battle. Some of it looking as sick as Nightwing's Eskrima sticks.
Like, oh my god, I love these things.
Other bits looking as iffy as the Club Ricochet move. But I definitely wasn't feeling it with the dislocated shoulder pop-in. They were close, and I'm happy to see choreographers more open to using grappling for their fight scenes after John Wick reinvigorated it. But the character acting and sound design didn't put me on my edge as much as it could have. And this is supposed to be the big what are you kind of moment, so it kinda needed to hit. The lighting in the stealth scene though is utterly fantastic. It not only looks awesome, it also helps Dick's final "See you in hell" line feel more impactful. Apparently they were originally planning to have Matt deck Dick with some cinder block, but that had to get cut. Live action do be live action. I'm actually kinda glad it got cut. Sure, Matt was able to see through the stealth tricks. I mean, you'd have to have super hearing to be able to hear them. But I interpret the following moment as Dick pretending to be out of commission, and clocking him with a cinder block would have felt unnecessary. After figuring out Matt's biology, Dick was using this whole lights out bit as a diversion to set up his ultra sound waves attack by throwing the wingdings all around the room. I may have joked about it a second ago, but who knows, maybe he was intentionally making noise by jumping off the cars to further fool Matt. And unlike the shoulder bit, the sound waves moment feels appropriately brutal with some really creative sound design to boot. This whole climax is so cool! In fact, it's too cool. You're in Season 5, Nightwing vs. Daredevil. Get with the program. Much better.
Dies of cringe.
By no means was I expecting this episode to be a masterpiece. It even managed to hold up better on a second viewing than I thought it would. I just personally happen to hold stunts under a great deal of scrutiny, which is why a lot of the action feels so fake to me. I can still appreciate the production value, Devil of the Night has a dark atmosphere, but most important of all, this battle does for live action on the show what Link vs. Cloud did for 3D on the show. Didn't need to be perfect or even all that great, but good enough to get me excited for the potential of future battles that go for a similar style. The passion is there, just look at the behind the scenes video. Everyone is clearly having a blast. They just had room to improve is all, and with a team as dedicated as this, I have total faith in their ability to kick it into high gear next time. Besides, none of that compares to the most egregious thing about this episode. What happened to the Blue Apron ad? Gone is the footage of Austin and Sam dicking around in the kitchen and the hilariously over-the-top dubstep. Now we get the company logo on a white background and nothing else. Obviously, this isn't detrimental to the episode itself. In fact, the ad breaks have only ever affected my score for an episode a handful of times. But you can't deny how much more sanitized these new ones feel. And it's pretty much gonna be the norm going forward, more or less anyway. I mean, sure, they probably did this to focus more on the quality of the actual episodes, and most people skip sponsorships on YouTube no matter what anyways. I don't know, man, I just like sponsorship skits when they're funny. It's really not that deep.
Do Mario vs. Sonic.
Mario, you are Sonic. Get out of here or I'll throw a rock at you.
Mario vs. Sonic 2018. Well, here we are, folks. 100 episodes in. Good God, am I tired. To commemorate such a huge milestone, as well as flaunt their newly acquired Rooster Teeth bucks, our hosts appear on screen for the first time. Sort of. Step aside, Dream. This is how you do a face reveal. The idea that it wasn't even intentional and they just forgot to take the cap off is such a death battle explanation for why they've never been on camera up to now. So from here on out, analysis segments will have a new factor when judging them: the cutaway gags. Admittedly, I'm gonna miss the tangents they used to go on where the editor would have to get creative with the footage. Moments like that are mostly replaced with some form of slapstick, a reference to the fighters, or if they're feeling really adventurous, a good joke. But as much flack as these segments usually get, I think it was a fantastic addition for the show. At the very least, it's nice to have these updated designs to put to our previously faceless hosts. It makes Death Battle feel like more of its own thing. Shows like these live and die by their hosts. Anyone can use pre-existing characters for glorified fan fiction. While the fights are typically the main draw, at the end of the day, it's Wiz and Boomstick that have kept me coming back for more. And I think actually seeing them in action can only do more good for the show than not. Even if you disagree, you can't deny how much it helps with merchandising. Now, as for the actual episode, it was my most wanted matchup at the time, so getting to see it as the 100th episode milestone was beyond hype. It's the show's first rematch. Like, honest to God rematch. Not a remaster like Boba vs. Samus, and certainly not whatever the hell this thing was. What better way to show how far Death Battle has come? I remember enjoying it so much when it dropped, so you better believe I'm excited to geek out with you all on two of my favorite video game worlds getting the run back they deserve. Even before you click on this video, you can tell it's gonna be peak. I don't normally praise these, but just look at that thumbnail. Using their crisp-ass ultimate renders and celebrating that it's a milestone episode without being too distracting. Exactly the kind of quality I remember this episode for.
Impressive. Very nice. Let's see Paul Allen's card. Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it.
The analysis segments are the kind of fun where I can just kick my feet back and enjoy them anytime. Both sides get pretty equal coverage of all the power-ups they've collected over the years. The music choices have a pleasant vibe, and they're both surprisingly lengthy. Even if I wasn't familiar with these franchises so intimately, I think what keeps them from feeling like a drag is the variety of what they talk about. On Mario's side, we spend a comprehensive amount of time going over his strength. And on the flip side, Sonic gets the same treatment, but for his speed, of course. The fact that they keep one-upping themselves and use the discussion as a backdrop for taking us through a wide variety of their games and different adventures makes it incredibly engaging, exciting in a way. You just want to see how much further they both can go. As for the cutaways, they may be a little stiff when it comes to the movement, but I quite like them here. The SPD song is funny, Boomstick keeps needing to drink from how crazy the feats get, even leading to what I have to assume is a SpongeBob reference. Count that shit, Death Battle! And much like their first analyses, the way both end has an air of reverence for their statuses as video game heroes. Admittedly, Mario's ends a bit too suddenly. Saying Mario's moving faster than light as these birds casually outfly him is pretty funny. And I think Boomstick is making a reference to the Wario commercial where he's trying to hypnotize the audience, though it's not very clear. But overall, the whole thing is a joy to return to, justified the host animations, and got me so excited for how much was in store for us in the animation. Blind Ferret returns, so naturally it looks great. Mario's kinda wide, but his facial expressions certainly compensate. And Sonic's design takes heavy inspiration from his Mania look, while his voice takes heavy inspiration from the Boost games. Huh? But speaking of, we get the return of Sephiroth-coded Cameron Nicod, holy shit that range, and Nicholas Andrew Louis' debut on the show.
Woohoo! I'm the winner! You're too slow!
Mario can be a little squeaky at points, but both sound pretty damn close to how I expect them to. Such good-natured gents who have even competed in the Olympics together, so of course they'd have a fun time sparring here.
Hello? That's a mine.
Finders keepers, pal.
Or Mario could get instantly pissed at Sonic for stealing his chair, and that's the reason they're fighting to the death. Okay, well, Sonic is pretty in character when it comes to his mixture of chill and cockiness, but Mario is a pretty simple character, mostly known for being whimsical and good-natured. So I guess I can live with his portrayal in the fight being the exact opposite of that. But hey, the sound design takes plenty of cues from both series without playing favorites. Retro Rivals is a really fun track by Theirwolf that kind of feels like the Under the Sea of Death Battle, managing to feel like a vibe and tropical piece while also getting some hints of butt rock in there. An absolute necessity here. If only we could have gotten some vocals too, that would have been so perfect. As for the choreography, it's been shockingly slow so far, only giving us 6 total direct hits including Sonic's Pocket Sand attack. But Mario just combined 2 of his 3D world power-ups, so the back and forth is totally gonna... Oh, that's gore in my Mario vs. Sonic crossover. Kinda takes the fun away seeing one of my childhood icons getting scalped, but I'm sure that was just an outlier. It wasn't. Half a bird's asshole. It's fine though, we get hyper Sonic. I guess they didn't have time to include his most iconic transformation? Why didn't he use the screen kill move here? But after a pretty funny punching barrage that Mario tanked after narrowly activating the Starman, we get another fun power-up combo with the wing cap. Kinda makes me wish we could do that in the games if I'm being honest. Mario says the thing and...
Let's go.
Okay, hot take incoming. I've seen so many people praise this moment as unexpectedly cool. But I really don't like it, at least not in this context. On its own, it is a cool line delivery, but Mario's not supposed to be cool. He's not trying to be cool. He's far too whimsical and pure-hearted to have any semblance of attitude about him, with very rare exceptions. Here, I don't see why you wouldn't want to just keep these bits exclusive to Sonic to help accentuate their contrast in personalities. What with Sonic being the poster boy of that radical mindset from the 90s. But saying Mario's cool is like saying Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse are cool. It just doesn't fit the original intentions of their characters. But it's fine! Because now they're fighting their way up to space with their most powerful techniques of all, not the ground pound or the spin dash.
It's the power of recycling!
Be a Planeteer. Recycle. We do. The power is yours.
Gotta love the Olympics reference though, and the moon busting behind them is a sick visual that also acts as a great sense of scale for the matchup. I also like both of their reactions to losing their power-ups.
Oh, shoot. Oh, mamma mia.
It's probably the most charming bit from this animation, besides Mario ripping his skin off to reveal clothes underneath. I love that gag. However, the implication that Sonic's invincibility lasts about as long as a single superstar is a stretch of endless possibilities. Did Bro go into this fight with 10 rings total? Once they start free-falling, we get a killer guitar riff as Sonic surrounds himself in electricity to try and spin dash Mario, who holds him back with his bare hands so hard that Sonic turns into a literal fireball. Spoiler alert.
Snape kills Dumbledore!
Mario wins this time, and that's a really neat way for them to tie into the first episode's finisher, showing how much tougher Mario is now. But they take things a step further by having him throw Sonic into the water Mario 64 style, causing an explosion complete with mushroom-style eyes. Like, that is so perfectly in line with the Mario World aesthetic. I don't even mind the bloody foot landing in a second-degree burned hands, because at least we finally get to see this Mario act cheery for a change. It only took them until the very end of the fight. Oh yeah, the fight's over, huh? Actually, come to think of it, what all happened in this battle? Give me a sec. Okay, so after running the numbers, Mario got 5 power-ups, 4 if we're discounting his natural fire ability, and 2 if we're counting the combos as 1 use each, and Sonic got 3 power-ups. 1 where he forcefully grabbed hold of a wisp as opposed to borrowing its power, leading to 1 direct hit, and the bubble shield, which was only used for escaping the ocean and nothing else. Okay, ignoring how boring that is after how detailed their analyses were, and especially ignoring the lack of synergy and counterplay between our two combatants, and especially ignoring how many more power-ups showed up in their first battle 7 years ago. The conclusion talks about Mario having enough power-ups to outlast Sonic's natural abilities, the direct opposite of their stance from last time. So as much as I like the death, you're not yourself today, Season 5. Do you need to lie down?
Death battle? What are you doing?
Making Mario vs. Sonic 2018.
It's 4 o'clock in the morning. Why on earth are you making Mario vs. Sonic 2018?
Because I've lost control of my life.
It would have been nice if the animation reflected this sentiment by actually showing Mario overwhelm Sonic with his variety. The fact that the cutaways themselves rival the amount of power-ups that show up in the fight is more damning than any critique I could give. I mentioned already how out of character Mario acts, but Sonic is no better, honestly. He's at his best when stealing a fucking chair. For the rest of the fight, he's just as pissed as Mario, and this portrayal has only gotten worse with time, given how much Ian Flynn has been leaning into Sonic's more diplomatic live and let live side. Hell, this single act of him grabbing a wisp without consent is one of the most out-of-character things you could have a freedom fighter do. He also just sucks in this fight when you really stop to analyze it. After speed blitzing Mario at the beginning, he makes no attempt to get around the pussy pummeling. During the invincibility clash, his animation looks way more visibly affected than Mario's. He takes way too much time getting rid of these clones. And before that cool spin dash I mentioned before, he closes the gap by closing his eyes and wildly swinging, implying that he has no combat skills and relies solely on his speed. Followed by an analysis that says he can't use chaos control and outright denies him of any universal feats in a black box. Do I hate this episode? No, definitely not. I still really love the analysis segments, even if the conclusion still has a ways to go. And I'll admit, they probably spend a little too much time talking about Sonic speed, ironically. The fight has plenty of fun nods to their series, and it is a step up from Smokey vs. McGruff when it comes to the visuals. Too bad it has to compete with the other hand-drawn episode of this season. Look, I'm not an idiot, alright? I've seen the common consensus of this battle change from bliss to disdain over the course of its lifespan. Hell, folks legitimately had trouble picking between this and Jack vs. Afro as the superior hand-drawn fight of the year, which is like debating over a 5-layer wedding cake and a bag of flour. It has arguably one of the hardest fall-offs in death battle history. I was just hoping that it wouldn't be my fall-off, you know? Call it high expectations, but I don't think it's crazy to expect this episode to at least be an improvement over its 2011 counterpart. But it's not. How the fuck is it not? Just compare the two side by side. But as we've seen proven time and again on this series, visuals can only go so far. A crude episode can be a masterpiece, and a Renaissance painting can have out-of-place graffiti. I've seen folks constantly liken this to a higher budget Dorkly animation, and I couldn't disagree further. It's a fucking mashed cartoon. It's well animated, sometimes really well animated, but where Dorkly is all about making obvious observations about video game tropes or being weirdly political for some reason, Mashed is all about taking family-friendly franchises, putting them in dark, grotesque, possibly sexual situations, and that's the joke! Now there are some animators featured on the channel I enjoy, but that's pretty much the gist of it for the most part. In fact, if you really squint at this episode, Mario's design here doesn't feel too far off from his look in Racist Mario. And that's a side of old school internet nobody deserves to be reminded of. By the way, I'm not showing any footage from it since I actually like my audience, so if you're really that curious, for the love of God, tread carefully, especially if you're younger. At least the gore in their first fight was saved until the very end, for crying out loud. If anything, it left more of an impact because of that. For a 100th episode milestone, Mario vs. Sonic 2018 is the epitome of 1 step forward and 2 steps back, leaving the whole experience in a very middling place quality-wise, and by far my most disappointing experience of the show. Does that mean I support the idea of Mario vs. Sonic the third one? Hell yeah, I do! Shit, I'd support it even if this episode was a masterpiece. With how many games, movies, and comics these two constantly get, you could do this fight every other year and still have something new to talk about. I would love a battle that takes the power-up back and forth from the first and marries it with the crisper visuals of the second. Personally, I'm convinced it's only a matter of time at this point. It got onto their rematch poll, and even Moro has gone on record about wanting to animate it. That's right, the Moro! How can any of you still say a third one would be boring? Are you allergic to good food? Oh damn, I almost forgot epilogue animations were a thing in this series.
You asked for it, Tubby!
Whoa!
Ever a slave to emotion.
Screw you, Harmorious! You'll never understand!
Ultron versus Sigma. Oh, I see the way you think, Death Battle. I guess that's just what it takes to be Also, fitting that the binary code episode number would be a robot overlord battle. That opening speech about the horrors of AI has aged far too gracefully. As far as comic analyses go, Ultron's is probably my favorite of the season. Nice panel editing, the character study feels incredibly in-depth, even giving us a peek into Hank Pym's story. And speaking of early peeks, we even get foreshadowing to one of the greatest episodes ever. Hell yeah, baby! I'm sure it couldn't have anything to do with the fact that this is also a Mega Man episode. The pacing of that moment, by the way, is so funny to me with how long it awkwardly lingers on Wiz donning the Mega Buster and posing. It ends up circling right back around to being charming for me. Johnny Bravo as Ultron. That caught me so off guard in the best way, especially since the situation itself is quite the eyebrow raiser. And the whole segment does a great job showing how deadly Ultron is in a way that goes beyond blowing shit up. Possessing an entire civilization to its very core is a really scary thought, assuming you could even still think in such an apocalyptic scenario. Not really sure what was up with Wiz and Boomstick casually outing themselves for having STDs for literally no reason. Like, that is next level not giving a damn. Sigma's is fantastic. A far cry from Zero's analysis, and even managed to redeem some of the weirdness that one had with the handling of the story. Sigma's heel-face turn makes so much more sense to me as an outsider now. And there were plenty of funny gags, like Zero's face replacing all the zeros in the number they calculated, figuring out what the hell a Kawanger is and conceding that the mistranslation actually sounds better, Boomstick getting momentarily excited at the notion of a different villain only for it to once again be Sigma, and it even managed to end on an old-school Mega Man English dub that actually sounds competent? Damn, you don't see that every day. Also, I was not expecting this episode to have so many sexual jokes. Even DK vs. Knuckles would blush. Should we expect this for every episode after the milestone? Speaking of that episode, you may recall how I mentioned Liam Swan entering the fray for the first time. Well, surprise! He's the first researcher on the show to get a shot at writing his own episode. And considering how far he's come, he clearly made a good first impression. Either way, it was likely for the best they got new blood on an episode like this anyway. I'm sure the old guard was getting flashbacks from the announcement alone.
Oh, what was I worried about?
That's right, folks. 7 years later, we finally get another robotic-raising riot of rife ruination. It's an army fight, but not quite in the same vein as Eggman vs. Wily, where that episode was about focusing on all the different units of their armies playing off each other and how Robotnik and Wily act as coordinators. The robot armies here are played off as more of a backdrop to Ultron and Sigma's one-on-one fight, which is clearly the main focus. I think the way they handle it is super clever. Both armies are established at the very beginning, and we even get a small scuffle to begin with. But they're mainly there to act as fodder for moments like Sigma barreling through the battlefield or Ultron using them as stage hazards and dad jokes. The portrayal of Ultron in general, I think, was a pretty neat balance of his unhinged comic self and the more quippy Joss Whedon-y version most folks were familiar with at the time. Heck, they even had a brief mention of this in the analysis to help clarify the differing origins. Mario vs. Sonic 2018 also made similar points about the research. I appreciate these little bits for trying to make the episodes more accessible while not compromising on the main source material. Any longer and they'd start to border on becoming annoying. Subtle foreshadowing. My main point in regards to the battle is that Ultron can flip between smooth-talking baddie and die, worthless scrap heap! At the drop of a nut. Like a mechanical nut. Major props to Austin Lee Matthews.
Hello, everyone. I'll accept your unconditional surrender now. You're mine!
The dichotomy of his performance gave me friggin' Radigan vibes. I love villains that keep you on edge like that when it comes to their unpredictability. Sigma sounds deliciously venomous the whole way through. Some of these line reads can get guttural as hell. And he low-key has the hardest line of the whole season in my opinion.
I'll tear out your sepals and bathe in your oil.
God damn, Supreme Overlord of Ice, you could give folks like Chris Tergliafera a run for their money. It's like you're some kind of voice actor with a professional background or something.
Now unify the world! Now meet your
hamster! Now, the actual fighting by itself isn't super interesting. They hold on this teleporting shot in particular a tad too long, for instance. But the fuck-off lasers are always a blast. God, comparing the skyscraper moment to the similar one from Zero's really does drive home how essential sound design is. Thank you, Chris, Phillip, and Andrew. And the track this go-around is easily one of my favorites of the season. Infection Perfection, aside from having a perfect name and cover art, is a metal track with a fittingly robotic edge to it that's great at matching the moment-to-moment beats of the dynamic, particularly after we stage transition. When looking from Sigma's cracked perspective, the track becomes more warped, even taking a 16-bit tone, before ramping up once Ultron slams down. And then there's a silent dip, as Sigma's head falls into the pit before cueing back in with the I promise I'm not a Nintendo boss final form. Except not really final form, because it all gets decided within Ultron's head as the Sigma virus slowly takes him over before getting backhanded with next to no effort on Ultron's end, showing his dominance when it comes to assimilation. It's a one-sided battle for sure, but I like it when battles like this don't play the one-sided card until the very end, cause otherwise it'd be kinda boring. It probably helps that Sigma Male is a gloating villain anyway, so naturally it's just really satisfying to see those kinds of characters get utterly schooled. Holy shit, Sigma's finally dead! Like, for real this time! Ultron has freed us! More like under new management. Wait a minute! Are those fucking Ultron? Voltron heads on the assimilated Reploids. That's it. This episode is a masterpiece. I refuse to acknowledge any other opinion. Liam and everyone on the Sprite team were so ahead of their time with this episode. Again, not the most complex choreography out there, but the domineering personalities of the fighters, engaging storytelling in the analysis, and the hella underrated fight track is more than enough to shoot this one up the top of my list. Right underneath Ryu vs. Jin for this season, and overall around the same tier as Eggman vs. Wily, fittingly enough. Making this arguably a better successor than the last episode, and that one actually was a successor. I didn't even mind the Boomstick's dad joke, cause at least the new animations and Wiz's sass give me something different to latch onto. I'm sure that'll hold.
Oh yeah, you hear that, me? I know I can do it. I knew you could do it, me. Thanks, me. Yeah, love this guy.
Many years ago, I took my finger and I pushed in my penis.
Roshi vs. Jiraiya. Ah, Roshi. The character Dragon Ball fans everywhere have some of the most complicated feelings towards. One minute he'll be laying down the kind of wisdom I try to live by on a daily basis.
Work hard, study well, and eat and sleep plenty. That's the turtle hermit way to learn.
The next he'll be reminding you why he's considered the granddaddy of all old men perverts in media. The worst part is that it's literally impossible to ignore. It's such a prevalent part of his character. He even has an arc in Super all about overcoming. Getting over it. This damn matchup almost entirely exists because of both of them belonging in senior citizen Orny jail. Oh, and also for training two of the most iconic anime heroes of all time. That's important too, I guess. And both analyses show equal amounts of reverence for these two, provide parallelism by introducing their greatest pupils, and aren't afraid to highlight their quirks. The humor is mostly pretty good, and the sex jokes actually fit this time. This cutaway especially highlights one of the advantages of being able to see our hosts on screen. Cause on its own, Boomstick's comment would just be another eye roller. But seeing Wiz's character animation being like, "Do you see what I have to deal with on a daily basis?" got me smiling. Even if the record scratch and cricket chirping could have easily been taken out. Like, seriously, there are other ways to get the sound of sudden silence across. Like, for example, the sound of silence. It's nice to see a Naruto analysis I actually enjoy for a change, and I really like how tactfully they handle Jiraiya's final moments. Boomstick even finds a way to see past the dude's creepy surface and acknowledge that he really can be gallant deep down. Like I said before, as a Dragon Ball fan, I have such a weird relationship with Roshi, and I wouldn't be surprised if Naruto fans were in a similar boat with Jiraiya. But these are fictional characters at the end of the day, and if anything, these glaring flaws make them so much more interesting to talk about and add a bit of nuance to the important roles they play in both of these stories. They're more than just holier-than-thou mentors who have always seen this before. They're extremely flawed individuals. Besides, I just find them funny most of the time. Even going off of this one clip they used for Jiraiya, I bet I'd vibe with him too.
When you reach the stature I have, the ladies worship at your awesomeness!
Again, really not that deep. One more nitpick before we move on to the fight though. Why the hell is this random part of the analysis the most replayed portion of the video? I was half expecting that honor to go to the sexy jutsu moment, because I guess Jack was right about eyesight being optional after all. But no, it's just a moment of different jutsus being listed. It's not like it was too fast that you need to go back and read it, and there have been other analysis bits of listing multiple fighting styles that didn't garner the same attention. Seriously, you guys had a perfectly fun and creative fight to replay a bunch, how dare you? It really wasn't a surprise having their fight start over smut, but I find it extra funny how it still manages to be some kind of battle of philosophies, yet it's over smut. The human form is more than meets the eye. Only a true man of culture can go further beyond and let the words themselves paint a beautiful picture for him. Bitch, I just want to see some God, what am I doing? And apparently that's what my Roshi sounds like. Good to know. It's a good thing they hired Patrick Rodriguez and not me.
Hey, fuzz for brains. Where are the pictures? It's just words in here.
That right there is a certified banger impression. I especially love the way he walks into the store and is just mumbling to himself like Popeye. It's so charming, and I just have to assume it was ad-libbed. But he's not just a feeble old man. He's got the kind of Dragon Ball battle cries I didn't realize I'd been missing during this retrospective. Seriously, for a guy whose other most notable voice acting credits are another old guy and that one Fed who got betrayed by his snowman best friend.
Well, time for some target practice. But why, Snowman?
He's a freaking natural at this, and I'd love to hear him in more projects. Jonah Scott also sounds great as Jiraiya, further proof that his performance as Thor last time was not his fault in the slightest. His silky smooth tone is a great contrast to Old Man McGucket after learning about anime.
Pictures? You fool! Words paint 1,000 beautiful pictures all by themselves!
Oh hey, we even get Stephen Kelly's first appearance on the show as Gamma Bunta. A very unique kind of cameo since technically it's outside help, but he's used to great effect as a means for Jiraiya to buy himself time to transform, another way of making Roshi look badass, and he still manages to leave an impression with these line reads despite the minimal screen time. By the way, he's referring to Jiraiya at this moment, not Roshi. For one, he's never met the guy, so how would he know he's a perv? And Jiraiya's technically the one that got him in that situation in the first place. I'd be a little miffed too, being stuck inside an itty-bitty living space. Without a doubt, the best thing going for this episode is its choreography and how intrinsic strategy is throughout. It's not only fitting for a battle of mentors, but it's arguably the closest death battle has ever gotten to feeling like a Dragon Ball fight. Not a Dragon Ball Z fight, I mean a Dragon Ball fight. Old school, baby. Sure, Mr. Satan vs. Dan could reach those heights, but that was more akin to the comedy of OG Dragon Ball. I'm talking about one with actual martial arts. It's riddled with that Toriyama charm, the techniques and gotcha moments take precedence over flashy combos and planet busting, and we get some great hand-to-hand which isn't all that common for pixel battles. And not to say that pixel battles are bad at hand-to-hand combat, just that it's not something they usually go for all that often. It also looks and sounds wonderful. Turtle and Toad might be my pick for the most underrated Beowulf track ever. There's just something about a ukulele getting utilized for a hardcore ninja rock song that gets me so pumped. It even takes that saturated style from Naruto vs. Ichigo and improves upon it massively. How's that? Well, I can actually tell what the hell is happening. Most of the time anyway. I could rewatch this episode countless times. Even the victory screen makes me smile. I was afraid we wouldn't get a sillier Roshi clip after his analysis ended on a more action-packed one, so that's very much appreciated. Hell, I even like Boomstick's little rendition of the TMNT theme when talking about Turtle School. But the death is a point of contention for many when it comes to this fight. After the iconic back on the beach bait and switch from Jiraiya, that's how you fucking do a twist in your anime battle, bitch. The Rasengan and Kamehameha clash was done perfectly. Roshi may be a lot stronger, but he was letting Jiraiya close the gap so he could get a solid tag in. Something Roshi has yet to do in his tough boy form. But then Jiraiya uses his genjutsu to hypnotize the old fool for a killing blow. Shout out to the background here, by the way. I didn't say it before, but I really love the dynamic set changes throughout. We even get motherfucking Kame House shell, yeah baby! But before the final blow was struck, Roshi unconsciously punches through Jiraiya's body and wins. Okay. On the one hand, I'll concede that it was a major oversight on our Toad King's part not to move out of the way, and if he had stabbed Roshi sooner, he probably could have avoided getting split in half. Phrasing. Again. Hey, I had to use some sex jokes for this segment. At the same time though, he didn't have much time to react at all. And just cause he trapped Roshi in the illusion, that didn't all of a sudden halt his forward momentum. And we do know that Roshi is a lot stronger and faster, so a one-shot like this isn't out of the ordinary. Nor is it shoehorned given how this battle has been about Jiraiya getting around Roshi's brute force using tricks. Something the ending results further elaborate on. For all we know, if Jiraiya had stabbed him, it probably would have been as fruitful as trying to stab Broly as a baby. The abridged version, I mean.
Son of an alien whore.
Plus, we get the victory sign from Roshi right after as he accepts the surprisingly fortuitous situation he finds himself in, and I'm sorry guys, but this ending is far too Toriyama coded for me to dislike it. It even gives off Mr. Satan vibes in the best way. I can understand why others take issue with it, and we've obviously seen much better deaths during this retrospective, but I would consider this one of the best deaths of the season. And believe you me, this season has been in desperate need of some dubs in that department. Roshi vs. Jiraiya came out during a nice little sweet spot before Dragon Ball really started to rival Marvel and DC when it comes to oversaturation. It's not quite a masterpiece, not every joke in the analysis lands, and there are a few weird bits in the pixel art that are tough to look at for too long. But I would go so far as to say that this is the most underrated episode of the show. It's criminal that more people don't praise it. As well as hilarious that the fight is a whole minute longer than Naruto vs. Ichigo. Oh, stop, it's already dead. I'm putting this episode above Iron Man vs. Lex Luthor. On to the finale, peasants!
Got my name on this win like it's the Thanos copter. You just got no answer. 4 Fortnite's dopest dance.
Thanos versus Darkseid. Is it weird to say I'm feeling nostalgic right now? Not towards this episode specifically, but more for a time when MCU movies felt cutting edge, and we all felt that drive to go out and watch every single one of these, even when we really didn't want to. It was an impressive balancing act, interconnecting all these movies into one cohesive world, and it was all leading up to a final showdown with the biggest bad of them all, besides Jonathan Majors, Thanos. Infinity War is still one of my favorite superhero movies. The stakes never felt so real, having all our favorite heroes fight alongside each other for the first time was a true marvel, and seeing it all from the perspective of Thanos as the protagonist was a genius move for getting us invested in his motivation. To this day, it's still considered one of the best villain ideologies, where it's like, I get where you're coming from, according to your own worldview, but you still need to be put on ice. This is a superhero movie after all.
You should have gone for the head.
Yeah, that final moment of Thanos looking out into the sunset peacefully content with his actions is still the best scene out of any Marvel movie I've ever seen, even outside of the MCU. Honestly, it's no wonder they weren't able to top it with Endgame, a movie that, as fun as it is, ruined a lot of the stakes and assassinated so many character arcs that had been building up for several years, but that didn't take away from the impact of this moment, and the effort to give us a thrilling conclusion to the saga was admirable. So why is the MCU so reviled now? 2 words. I find it funny how many lengthy video essays exist on that topic when really you just need to say those 2 words. It's pretty self-evident. James Gunn, please deliver us. But when it comes to this episode, there was no better time to be doing a Thanos fight. And of course, you'd want to have him go up against the big bad of DC. Sure, he didn't have a movie quite on the same level of cultural impact, but if we were going off that metric for matchup making, we would have been stuck with this doofus, who I'm not going to say the name of because I want to see how many of you out there actually remember/bother to give a shit. Besides, the movies weren't the main focus. This was a chance for Death Battle to shed some light on their pure comic book origins, particularly Thanos with all his newfound fame, and give the general audience a new perspective on where he comes from and what he's done, much like with Strange and Ultron. From the moment this episode starts, they let us know that it's all about power. Thanos's is great! Granted, the transition from Thanos being a well-adjusted celestial to a murder-happy simp for death was giving major Phase 3 Prophet vibes. Like, damn, that went from 0 to 100 fast. But other than that, it's a great history lesson for Marvel lore in general and makes Thanos feel crazy strong even without the Infinity Gauntlet. So I can only imagine how crazy shit will explode from here once we get into the stones.
You know, personally, I'd rather be stoned than continue giving this wannabe heel the time of day.
Oh, that seems uncalled for. God damn it! I forgot you were in this episode! I wasn't expecting you!
Nobody expects the Canadian Inquisition! Besides, you can't have a Death Battle review on this channel without the classic man D. P.
We did. The last one.
Nobody counts that one. That's the review where you lost your frickin' mind over a unit of measurement. Nerd!
Well, much like this episode, you were completely unnecessary. Your rubber hose 3D animation may be fun, but this was meant to be a sort of weaknesses section to transition into why Thanos felt the need for even more power with the gauntlet. All they had to do really was just talk about you cucking Thanos and how that made him jealous. No expensive CGU required. Hell, look at the specific use of pronouns.
Well, Thanos did curse him so he couldn't die and be with her.
Notice how Wiz says curse him and not curse you. Why is he speaking like you're not even there? It's like the script was originally written without you bursting in and they forgot to update the sentence for the final draft.
Wiz is a smart fella, don't get me wrong, but he is terrible when forced to improvise. If I'm not there to keep those two on their toes, then who will?
But did you have to keep the audience on their toes too? They talk about you and death so casually, as if it's common knowledge. I feel like it'd be very easy for most people to miss the subtext here.
But it is common knowledge, Bandana Man. You've seen my last episode.
Are you telling me that the stupid death tangent from your Pinkie Pie episode only exists as a justification for you showing up here?
Well, duh. I make everything better with my presence alone.
Hold it! You would claim such a thing when your appearance here has the exact opposite effect! Thanos' analysis up to this point was fine. Some of the jokes were cringe, but it was mostly fine. Then after you show up to talk about basically nothing for almost a minute, it sinks in that our hosts still haven't talked about the Infinity Gauntlet, and now they have to speed run through it due to the lack of time. So instead of getting insight into what each of the stones are capable of beyond these brief bullet points, we get a lecture on why they have a different color scheme from the movies. What the hell are these whack-ass priorities? Doctor Strange and Ultron have similar moments in their rundowns of bringing up differences between the comics and movies, but here the clarification bit far outstays its welcome. Was this color chart included literally just so people wouldn't get confused during the animation? If that was such a big concern, why not just use the colors from the MCU and leave it at that? One of the black boxes straight up says that the comics recreated the stones to match their cinematic color scheme. So if anything, wouldn't it have technically been more accurate to do that? Then again, it probably happened at a time too far into the animation's production for them to change it. But the whole thing is still so superfluous to spend so much time on when it could have just been a visual they talked over, or better yet, a black box! And again, they're just a bunch of fucking colors! I think the comic nerds would have forgiven you for taking creative liberties here. And it's topped off with an unsatisfying ending. I sure would hate to learn more about why he was feeling insecure about his abilities. I have never seen such a stark drop-off in quality in any of these episodes. And we've been over 100 of these. Also, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you're not the Marvel Jesus you think you are, bub. Cause none of this would have happened if you hadn't... Wait. You did this on purpose!
What? Moi? You really think I would be petty enough to want to steal the thunder and lightning from my arch nemesis's time in the spotlight?
Yeah!
Huh. I respect your honesty. Yes, it was me, Nate. It was me all along, Nathan. I may not be able to do much physical damage to him, but there are other, more creative and fun ways to humiliate a guy. I've even written a book on it.
You wrote a book.
Okay, like 75% of it was ChatGPT, but everybody is a ghostwriter.
Oh, I could... Chill, Nathaniel, you're fine. You're only giving him what he wants. Besides, it's just 1/3 of this episode. I'm sure Darkseid's will be just as bad. Great.
What?
Oh, remember when I said, I'm sure Darkseid's, and then stopped mid-sentence?
But that was 7 minutes ago.
Well, if you had watched us from the outside, it would have sounded like a seamless thought.
Really? 'Cause I thought you just lost your train of thought.
Ugh, of all the times for you not to see past the fourth wall, you choose now?
Sometimes my meta abilities take on a mind of their own. Whichever direction is more likely to frustrate people, usually.
And yet it's still not as frustrating as this analysis. I can't even blame you this time. It starts off with 2 incredibly shoehorned MCU references. For God's sake, how are we still not past this? It got annoying on Thanos' side, but at least they were actually discussing a Marvel character. Stick to your team. Speaking of teams, did you know this was a Rooster Teeth show? Well, here's another Rooster Teeth show. It may not fit in the context of this segment's tone, vibe, structure. Watch our shit! It ended on a cliffhanger. There, I just saved you 2.5 hours. You know what? I'm being too harsh. From what I've heard, that show deserved better. And at least the Nomad's cameo didn't drag as long as your cameo. Not to mention he's got that classic mute character charm going for him. Something I think we all can agree is desperately needed these days.
What? The ability to treat filmmaking as the visual medium it is and not bogging the audience down with flowery exposition and corny dialogue?
No, the ability to shut the fuck up. I kinda wish he'd crashed this review.
Yeah, you might have trouble tracking him down. This episode is the last known footage of the guy before he tragically became a missing person.
Damn, now I just feel sad. Anyway, have a Nickelback reference. What do you mean that was out of nowhere? I mean, all I did was borrow it right before the ending of Darkseid segment! At points, it can be interesting to learn about his biology, and the reveal that his actual form is too powerful for our own universe to handle the stink lines radiating off of him was pretty cool, as well as an immediate red flag to everyone watching this that the year of Thanos was about to crash and burn harder than the year of Luigi. I just wish it didn't have such a tonal whiplash problem. It's kinda hard to get invested in the anti-life equation when I'm being distracted by Boomstick drinking from a beer can with eyes. Once again, to be fair to the Nomad, it's not like there was much substance to pay attention to anyway. Much like Thanos' big trump card, they hardly spend any time explaining what the damn thing does. Parallelism win? We don't even get any examples of its usage. If it makes you a slave to Darkseid, then obviously I'd like to see how that can apply to a fight. Instead they're like, it's weird. Moving on. What the fuck is going on with my life? Seriously, these segments are mostly fine, but then out of nowhere hit you with the stupidest crap that completely takes you out of it. With Darkseid, it's permeated throughout, but with Thanos, he lulls you into a false sense of security, and then boom, barrel blast steamrolls you for the last 2.5 minutes. I don't know how much more abuse I can take.
Don't worry, Nate. You still have the animation to look forward to, remember?
Yeah, you're right, there's still—
Fly, you can teleport, it'll send you through time and space, and it's perfect for gaming.
What?
Oh, that scene was in this episode? Must have slipped my mind.
I guess to be fair, you would make for an excellent fool to a king.
Hey, I'm taking that as a compliment. Haven't you ever read Shakespeare? Those guys were always spitting the truth.
At least I can take solace in seeing you confettied away. If that was an excuse for showing more of what Thanos can do, then fine. We've got a 6.5-minute fight to look forward to. I'm sure that was just the beginning of some stellar choreography befitting of our finale. The first move is Thanos going for a simple punch, but Darkseid brings it together by blocking with a headbutt and counterattacking with his hands behind his back. Alright, a little tame for these guys, but I can appreciate the style points. We end up on the street where we get a damn cold interaction.
Dare strike me, put a stop to make for the sweet release of death.
You first.
It's worth noting now that Justice Washington and Edward Bosco are pretty good as Thanos and Darkseid respectively. Not my favorites of the year, but still serviceable enough to the roles. Ed could fill out that famous voice actor credits meme with his characters from season 5 alone, and even beyond. Then Thanos turns the world on its side in a sick as hell visual. Seriously, the VFX artists brought their A game when it came to the reality distortion. And this is just the beginning. What happens next? Thanos teleports to Darkseid and punches him some more. Then chucks him with his bare hands. Okay, now he's running up the skyscraper instead of teleporting again. Gets staggered by a car. The Thanos copter shows up without explanation. Man, they really like this skyscraper, huh? But hey, we get some strategy game. Y'all know how much I like that. Darkseid is forced to defend himself with his Omega beams when Thanos weaponizes the skyscraper wreckage. After just showing Darkseid no sell an entire one. But it's okay, cause Thanos uses this opening to punch Darkseid again. But no, you see, this time, it was really hard. The ground fight stinks and it's the best part of this animation. Okay, I know I just said how good the visuals are. I'm especially impressed with the character animation. These are the most expressive 3D models we've seen yet on the show. But aside from some cool moments, a majority of their fight is just glorified wrestling and chucking building tier shit at each other. I would say this is for escalation, even if the things they decide to no-sell are wildly inconsistent even within the context of the fight. But once we get into space, it becomes weirdly dull. They may be destroying planets and causing black holes, but something about the lighting and the design of the planets makes everything feel weightless and empty. It doesn't feel like a Mad Titan battle of celestial proportions, it just comes off as two character models getting bashed together in the space sandbox. I can understand why some folks could still be invested. This imagery of Darkseid exiting the black hole is pretty great, but by the time they become giants, it goes down the space shitter fast. I did not come to Thanos vs. Darkseid for this hand-to-hand BS. I can't even tell what's going on here with how zoomed in the camera is. Then they do the big boy double punch, causing something to happen. A universe reset, maybe? I don't know, it's pretty vague. But hey, if you don't mind the planets coming off as chunky billiard balls and think the CQC is cool, that's great too. But then we get to the part of the battle that I don't think anybody likes. I don't mind Darkseid convincing Thanos to come to his home dimension. That was something that couldn't be avoided given how blatantly he takes this, and it was handled about as tastefully as it could have been. That's all fine and dandy. The only thing I would have changed was doing something other than the blip move over and over again. Plus, seeing Darkseid manipulate Thanos a little more into following him like this black box mentions would have been appreciated. But then we get to the death. Thanos gets transported to the Omega Sanction, a reality where you're forced to die an infinite number of times, each one worse than the— Oh, you already know where this is going. It's fucking Deadpool again!
Come on, give me credit. I'm this guy's worst nightmare. So of course I'd be his maitre d'. The D standing for death in this case.
Then why, oh why, couldn't you have killed him in literally any other way than shooting him once without even leaving any visible damage? That was seriously it. That's the upper limit of your creativity?
Of course not. The actual upper limits of my creativity weren't in the budget. I sorta blew it earlier in the episode with my Mr. Fantastic routine.
You really are the gift that keeps on giving, aren't you? At least we get to end on Darkseid reclaiming his throne. This battle's motive is literally just Mario vs. Sonic's, and you cannot convince me otherwise. And a decent closing note of crushing the—
So you watching any anime?
KO! You couldn't even let him have the last laugh in his own death battle.
You should have been there earlier in my sales pitch. The guy was just not biting. Those Herman Miller chairs have seriously monopolized the market.
I'm at least glad this episode goes the Flash versus Quicksilver route and being upfront about the one-sided nature. I hate to kick the guy while he's down. Except not really, because he's a murderous tyrant fueled by the Bone Zone. But I'd posit this as the biggest stomp on the show. Not in terms of the stat gap, though that doesn't offset the obvious downplaying here, but more so from the perspective of literally what the hell could he possibly do? He can't even handle being in the same room as the guy. Feel free to comment if I'm wrong. And with that, we—
Run the gauntlet!
Oh, you son of a bitch!
Holy crap, the pun too! Even I forgot about that one! I must have been feeling extra feisty that day. You good? Something bugging you? Was it Thanos' segment? Was it the gamer chair? Was it the anime line? Was it everything about the death? Was it me not even using a fraction of my power to get my grubby fingerprints all over a highly requested episode because of how salty I was towards Disney at the time? Well, maybe I do talk too much.
That's it. I'm gonna kill you.
Oh, that's cute, Nathaniel. Real cute. As if you could keep me out of your season 6 video. I am inevitable, baby. Tell you what, though, I'm a good sport, so go ahead and hit me with your best shot. I won't even flinch at you.
Alright, bet.
Ooh, how original. Let me guess, a cheap knockoff from Amazon? I swear you can get anything online these days. Huh. Suddenly I don't feel so good. Oh, you cheeky little...
Finally. Hey, thanks again for helping me pull this off, man.
Yeah, now give it back. Though I am surprised you decided to let him go off for as long as he did, even though I don't even think he ruined the video that much.
His presence certainly wasn't helping this clusterfuck of an episode, let alone our season finale. For as fancy as the visuals can get at points, the fight just isn't all that entertaining. At least on the ground, there was some value in seeing Thanos' grimace chin get slap-chopped by a damn taxi of all things. But after a while, the fight kinda devolves into a nothing burger of dragging set pieces and abysmal choreography when taking the potential of this matchup into account. We don't even get to see the anti-life equation get used. It's just relegated to a damn black box. Even Mario vs. Sonic 2018 represents its combatants more faithfully. Also, Kings of Infinity is one of my least favorite custom tracks of the show. On its own, it's fine, but as a fight track, it does not fit the tone of this grandiose battle. Not even because it's rap. Omega Sparks is a great pick for intimidating vocals. It's just so low-key and barely goes anywhere. If they went for something more akin to an NF song by applying orchestra rap as opposed to the repetitive brass, then maybe I could get behind it. I suppose it's fitting for an episode so afraid to step away from the movies to feel like the closest thing on Death Battle to a blockbuster slop fest. I hope I don't come off as ungrateful to the team who clearly put their all into this from a production standpoint. There was even a point in time where I considered this a perfect episode, believe it or not. It's just that nowadays, it comes off as extremely misguided in my eyes. That combined with the length makes rewatches a friggin' chore. Jotaro vs. Kenshiro and Black Panther vs. Batman may be worse episodes, but hey, at least they're over before I know it. I'm still trying to get through the damn Deadpool tangent over here. Speaking of which, you don't think we went too far with him, do you?
Nah, I can bring it back whenever I want to. I still need a video editor, you know? I guess you could call this more of a cosmic timeout, if you will.
I suppose that's not the worst thing. Might even give him time to forgive and forget.
Aw, I wouldn't count on that. Oh, and by the way, if you don't use the reality stone to manipulate the gauntlet into thinking that it's yours, but even then, in order to do that, you need to use the time stone to go back in time to the first Thanksgiving, back when turkeys were on the menu, and take the power stone off the menu. That way you can punch a hole in the fabrics of space to get the space stone, and then the space stone you need to warp to like 7 different dimensions in order. Like, it's a very specific order, and honestly, I don't even remember the names of what they are, so I can't imagine you would know what dimensions they would do. But either way, you need to be dimension hopping over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. See, 7 times, just like I said. And then at some point, you need to get the Mind Stone. Wait, no, it's the Soul Stone. Yeah, you need the Soul Stone to, like, duplicate Ronald Reagan just so you can kill the shit out of him, and then use that deceased corpse to necromance him and manipulate him with the Space Stone? No, the Soul Stone, using the Soul Stone, still using the Soul Stone for that necromanced corpse of Ronald Reagan into manipulating him to work with MODOK, who has the Mind Stone. I mean, I guess it depends on the dimension you're in, but I'm pretty sure that it would be in the dimension where, like, everyone's a puppy. Yes, it's that one, because he's like a Dalmatian as well, and then at some point you need to, like, steal the Mind Stone from him when he isn't looking, and only then will you be able to go back in time to the second Thanksgiving, this time with the Power Stone. You need to, like, actually punch the concept of time itself, and then, like, eventually that's when you get the Reality Stone, and only then will you be able to manipulate the Infinity Gauntlet into thinking it's yours. But since you didn't do that, then it's gonna have some very, very, very specific and negative repercussions, consequences, and conundrums that will plague you like a wonder of you for the next 2,000 years. And in this situation, since it was Deadpool related, then it's probably going to involve him actually fucking you up in some kind of way. Okay, I know that was a lot of information that I just consciously decided not to tell you, and you may hate me, but it ain't no lie. Bye, bye, bye. Bye, bye!
I'm sure that'll be fine. Besides, I've got more important matters to attend to, like ranking and reviewing every episode in 10 words or less. Ready? Go! Or a good episode would have been nice. This was just the first billionaire. Watch out, SeaWorld. Everyone acts all powerful until the infinite life glitch comes out. Dear Princess Celestia. Heard you had a recent job opening. Sonic has a good track record with threequels, just saying. Doctor, I'm afraid of sightseeing.
I bet.
So, like, does Pit go to double heaven? Still a more satisfying ending than Skylanders Academy.
All right, let's go meet my family.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da. Cancelled. Members get advance tickets to Nightwing vs. Daredevil on Ice. The undead horde adds so much life to this fight.
You guys didn't tell me I'd be fighting a human. Everything belongs to me.
Oh, because he's a Disney villain.
How could I lose?
I pissed on the moon! By using the power of nothingness, How is the serial killer covered in blood less scary? I don't promote using drugs for art inspiration. Alcohol, though. Remember how I said last season felt Scarol? Well, why don't we take a look at some of the highlights of this season? We got Torian's last episode as the lead animator, acting as an explosive swan song to his time on the show that still resonates today, while also acting as a changing of the guard for the new kids on the block. Our first ever hand-drawn animation from Luis, one of the riskiest matchups to date managing to be a standout, a 3D fight acting as a beautiful showcase of what our new crew is capable of, as well as being the first in Unreal, live action, a semi-army fight, a bunch of the most requested episodes ever, triple digits, and finally getting to see Wiz and Boomstick in their glorious, mostly animated forms. Side note, I like how they've been treating Boomstick's detailed knowledge of weapons more casually. He should be allowed to geek out just like his cohort without someone needing to say something like, "Wow, I can't believe how much you know about this incredibly specific thing." Like, yeah, he's the weapons guy. Of course he does. You think he got his degree for nothing? Taking a step back to really look at every milestone and innovation Season 5 brought to the table, this truly was a year made for the fans. Seriously, that top 5 in particular has some of my favorite episodes of all time. But then you remember to put your glasses on and start to notice that as iconic as this season can be, a lot of it is still being held together by duct tape and super glue. Season 5 has an abysmal start. There's no sugarcoating it. At least Season 4 had Scrooge vs. Shovel Knight in its first 3 episodes, mid as it is. Here we have a nothing tender of a premiere, downplaying at its most baffling, and my new least favorite episode of the show. Now, let me be clear. That does not mean I think it's the worst episode. Death Battle's unholy trinity of cyberbullying, selling out, and uncomfortable sexism is a league of its own. Hell, you could even consider it a Rushmore of bad if we include Rooster Teeth Venom vs. Bane. But after putting principle aside, as well as company, Jotaro vs. Kenshiro pisses me off at its core. Like, if I hated this episode anymore, it'd start to border on Jonathan's relationship with Ragna vs. Soul Bad Guy. Who knows, maybe if I finally get into Fist of the North Star, I could dedicate a whole half hour to breaking down how much I despised this episode too. From its oversimplification of the stories to the nauseating animation. Speaking of stories, it took quite a while for the remnants of Season 4's respect thread scars to fade. The amount of times our host said, "X character has used these powers to pull off some impressive feats," as a transition into the feat section got pretty tiring. As well as the Boomstick's dad jokes managing to rival the Boomstick's ex-wife jokes in grown-worthiness. That didn't take very long. And we're not even close to episode 150, fuck me. Even the episodes I did like suffered greatly in their scores because of missed opportunities in the analysis portions, preventing the season from receiving what should have been the most obvious 11 on my metric yet. If anything, this and last season have made me realize how much more I value a strong analysis script and presentation than I thought. Which I hope I was able to faithfully represent with my ratings. Especially for those of you who skip right to them. I know you're out there. Season 5 took quite a while to give me a real moment I could sink my teeth into. It's frankly insane how much the second half clears the first. Sure, I think Leon vs. Frank is a good episode. Great in some cases, but I'm not over the moon for it or anything. But then we got to Ryu vs. Jin, and it almost felt like watching a new show. All of a sudden, Death Battle was trying so many new and interesting things. Even the episodes I didn't like clearly had a passion behind them. That being said, one was a bastardization of 2 beloved icons of my childhood that gets carried by its pretty visuals and sound design, and the other is a bloated, infuriating experience that still remains the worst finale of the show by far. In a world where Deadpool vs. Pinkie Pie exists. I do think this season is good, certainly an improvement over the last one with how much it actually tries. But does it top Season 2 for me? Not quite. I can respect it for taking so many risks, and I am glad the team finally found their footing towards the end before comedically pratfalling at the last second. It just didn't reach those same highs as consistently as I'd like, and believe me, it takes a lot to be less consistent than friggin' Season 2. Something that was consistent about this season though was the deaths. And by that I mean consistently anticlimactic. Which is pretty bad when it makes up 50% of your show's title. Boring explosions, off-screen shenanigans, confusing build-up and payoff, everything about the Omega Sanction. There are about 3 deaths this season that I at least like, assuming Sigma counts, along with 2 that I actually adore. Both of the hand-drawn fights, funnily enough. but it's not enough to offset how many times they drop the ball at the last second, sometimes even outright ruining what was otherwise going to be a fantastic ending. I wish I could ignore the body Ryu versus Jin, but you make it so hard! And once again, I think a lot of my woes with this season can be chalked up to the scripts just not vibing with me. Sam's episodes have improved immensely, even within the year itself. If you can go from writing Black Panther vs. Batman to Carnage vs. Lucy, that takes a lot of drive. But most of the time, it still felt like there was a ways to go when it came to sucking me in as much as earlier episodes did. And the same can be said for the times when Sean was the project lead, whose best episode was the one where my biggest complaint was how out of character one of its combatants acted. No disrespect towards the guy, though I think it's worth noting that he doesn't have any writing credits for the show beyond this season according to the wiki. Again, no disrespect, I cannot stress that enough. At the end of the day, I guess what I'm really trying to say is... I miss Nick! Ignore the fact that his only episode this season was the pony one. But as much as I love the contributions he and Torian made for Death Battle, the shoes eventually got filled by some talented newcomers up for the task. Optimus vs. Gundam is still one of the prettiest episodes of the show, and Ultron vs. Sigma was Liam's writing debut. To put that into perspective, Nick's writing debut was Batman vs. Captain America, and Ben's writing debut was the very first episode. I mean, what did you expect? Even if the finale was pretty messy, it was clear that the show would not only be fine, but possibly set itself up for one of its best seasons yet. So for a season dedicated to the fans, sure, it's far from perfect. But I think getting everyone excited for a bright future ahead is as dedicated to the fans as you can possibly get. Arrivederci, and stay tuned.
Can I come?
No, Caboose. No, you may not.
Okay! Sneak away, sneak away, sneak away.